our native son. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yep. Mr. Villio?
Just congratulations on making it to this level.
Thank
And
you.
what a great accomplishment and a wonderful addition to Talbot County. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. I know your parents are very proud of you, and they've done a wonderful job
Thank
giving back
you.
to the community as well. And it's nice to see that continue to the next generation. Thank you all.
Yep. Yep. Just like my colleague said, you're an impressive young lady, that's for sure.
Thank you very much.
And with you speaking and stuff, you probably could help me. Okay, you really could. So, but you got an awesome sidekick there, and he does a
Yes.
good job too. So you're very impressive, and we really appreciate everything you're doing for the school and the county and spreading the Frederick Douglass around and showing how good he is for the county. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Pack.
If I may, Mr. Callahan, and I'll piggyback on what Ms. Price said. You know, I've over the years sat in on many Eagle Scout presentations and watched the different projects that they, from park benches to dugouts at baseball fields and so forth. But this was so outside the box as far as the thinking of it, and then all the planning that had to go into it, and the technical aspect of it with the satellites and finding and all of that. So I'm quite impressed with this. Again, I've seen many projects over the years being here, but this one certainly struck me as something different. So,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
If it pleases the council, I would appreciate if we could bring up the picture of Frederick Douglass up here for a picture with you guys and your family to get some publicity and help get the word out.
Thank you.
That'd
Sure.
be acceptable.
That'd be great.
You want to go up?
Yeah, let's go down.
Okay. Well, I said up and then down.
Yep. Okay.
And if any members of the Honor Society would like to come up too, if the family is acceptable to that.
Okay, moving on to the next presentation would be Brookletts Place and Senior Center. Childlene, would you like to come on up? Yay.
I've also asked Ann DeMart, who is
Okay.
manager of the band.
Absolutely.
Center, to join.
Yeah, yep, no problem.
Good evening, Mr. Callahan
Yes.
and members of the council. I'd just like to begin by first congratulating Autumn, who's already left, on the awesome project that she's embarked upon for the Frederick Douglass Honor Society. It's been such a pleasure working with her throughout this entire endeavor. Thank you to the council for your continued support of the Talbot County Senior Centers. We're so grateful for all you've done and continue to do to support our efforts. Thank you for being present today when we cut the ribbon for our newly expanded parking lot. The project took approximately 5 years to complete, but you didn't give up, and I appreciate all that each of you did to help to make it possible. The National Council on Aging has proclaimed September as National Senior Center Month. It provides an opportunity for centers around the country to promote positive images of aging, to highlight our centers to improve the lives of older adults. It also allows us to show the importance of the centers in our communities, create interest for prospective new members, and to collaborate with our community partners. This year's theme is strengthening community connections. We continually strive to partner with agencies within the community to bring worthwhile information to our members and non-members as well. As a matter of fact, we are hosting a community panel discussion on getting out there, how to re-engage after the pandemic at 1 p.m. on September 29th. The discussion is open to the community and will not only focus on social isolation, but elder abuse as well. This panel is made up of a group of community experts from the private sector, the Department of Social Services, the Talbot County Health Department, the Talbot County Free Library, and Upper Shore Aging Incorporated. In addition, the week of September 18th through the 24th is National Falls Prevention Awareness Week. We will have experts on hand to provide tips on helping to reduce falls, as well as a special Tai Chi presentation to urge our members to exercise more. As you know, both Brookletts Place and the Bay Hunter Senior Centers are active centers. We encourage our members to participate in learning opportunities to help support their memory. We've recently had a 10-week Aging Master Program and will be hosting a Senior Memory Program information session September 19th at 10 o'clock. In addition, we have a small gym with exercise equipment, has exercise classes, arts and craft classes, games and musical performances, featuring both local and out-of-state performers. We also promote friendship and camaraderie among our members. We have found that they're really concerned about one another, and they will let us know if they think something is not right with one of their friends. You were given a few examples of some of the programs and trips that we have had to connect our members to our center and our community. Our centers are definitely a place to connect and thrive, and we could not do it without your continued support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Childlene. Council, Mr. Peck?
Yes, thank you both for all that you do in running your respective centers. I'm sorry, thank you both for all that you do in running your respective centers. You know, Talbot County historically has had one of the oldest populations in the state, but an active population, as you said in your presentation. People come here not just because it's a wonderful place to retire to, but they still want to continue on socializing and get out and be a part of the community. And I think you, with the activities that you all offer, you have a weight room there, or an exercise room, I should say. You have an arts program, dancing, card playing. So you do a little bit of everything. Casino night, if I remember correctly. So, so there's a little bit of something for everyone at the senior center. So thank you both for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Ms. Price?
Just reiterate everything that Mr. Pack said. We've been working together for a very long time. I'm going to miss, working with you when I go off the council. I'm always very impressed by everything that you've done. You've brought some unique projects to us, and we know we've talked about it before, the collaboration with the YMCA and everything in St. Michael's and bringing the youth and the elders together. And yes, it's taken a very long time to get this parking lot. You've run such a successful program that people are like, what's the big deal with a parking lot? And it's like, because if you build it, they will come. And you certainly have attracted very many people to use what is called Brookletts Place, so that people don't really feel like it's, a senior center, because what you do isn't, those activities are attractive to anybody that would want to do that, including a casino night. Might have to check that out. So thank you so much, Childlene.
Thank you.
Mr. DeVillio? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for your work. It's been a pleasure working with you on the Commission on Aging, as well as the great facilities that you maintain there, the rooftop seating area is awesome. The conference room, which I know there was, a meeting this afternoon that other groups from the community are using it. Meals on Wheels, I always enjoy when I stop by seeing the people inside painting, playing cards. There were a couple guys playing the Wii bowling a couple weeks ago when I was there, and it's just so much fun to see the excitement and their young energy that comes out of them when they're using that facility. So you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate the little bit of time that I got to spend with you in there.
Well, thank you, and we hope that you will continue to volunteer for our Meals on Wheels program.
Uh,
We'll have to talk about it.
Thanks a lot, Childlene, and I hope hopefully, because we haven't had it in 2 or 3 years, is the Thanksgiving dinner, because I really look forward to that.
I'll send you the date.
Okay,
We've
that's
got it.
perfect. That's perfect. So appreciate your good work, and you do such a great job. Thank you. Mr. Pack? Oh, okay. Yep. Madam Secretary, could you read the proclamation, please?
Proclamation, Senior Centers Month, September 2022, Strengthening Community Connections. Whereas older Americans are significant members of our society, investing their wisdom and experience to help enrich and strengthen our communities. And whereas senior centers act as catalysts for mobilizing the creativity, energy, vitality, and commitment of the older residents of our communities through a wide array of services, programs, and activities, affirming the dignity, self-worth, and independence of older individuals by facilitating their decisions and actions, tapping into their experiences, skills, and knowledge, enabling their continued contributions to the community. And whereas the wide array of services, programs, and activities offered at Brookletts Place, the Talbot County Senior Center, and the Bay 100 Senior Center empower the older citizens of Talbot County to contribute to their own health and well-being and the health and well-being of their fellow citizens of all ages. And whereas during the pandemic, Brookletts Place and the Bay 100 Senior Center served as community partners, helping to ensure that our most vulnerable citizens, people aged 65 and older, many with underlying medical conditions, were cared for and able to stay connected, safe, and healthy. Now therefore, we, the County Council of Talbot County, do hereby proclaim September 2022 as Senior Centers Month in Talbot County and call upon all residents to recognize the tremendous contributions that senior centers make toward the betterment of our communities by strengthening community connections and recognizing the outstanding efforts of the staff and volunteers at the Talbot County Senior Centers who work every day to enhance the well-being of the older members of our community. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 13th day of September in the year of our Lord 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We got a motion seconded to approve. Could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Pack?
Aye. Or
I'm sorry,
Callahan.
Mr.
Yep.
Callahan.
Yep.
Mr.
Aye.
DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Ladies, if you wouldn't mind joining me down front for your presentation of your proclamation. Thank you for all that you're doing here. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. If you've been in any of our senior centers for any activity, just raise your hand at any point in time.
Okay, next up is the Talbot County Health Department. Dr. Maguire, how are you?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
I hope everyone is having a good evening. I wanted to give a fall health update to our Board of Health. And I want to just keep in mind you guys have a very busy agenda tonight, so I apologize if I skip through, but the slides are there for reference if you need
Okay, I
them.
appreciate it. Thank you.
September is Emergency Preparedness Month, so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. This is a good time, with hurricane season, flooding. It seems every time you look at the news, there's another emergency going on. So just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that it's a good time to set aside to keep your family safe during emergencies. Just keep in mind 3 things. Put together an emergency kit. Make a plan with your family to stay safe and stay informed by knowing how to get local alerts. And a great resource for everyone is the ready.gov site. So I urge everyone to go there and look at what they need to make sure that in times of emergency they can stay safe and healthy. I wanted to just give a very brief overview of monkeypox because I haven't gotten to do so yet to the Board of Health. This is something that we've gotten a lot of calls about at the health department, and I wanted to just describe what it is and how it's affecting us locally. So it was declared a public health emergency, and it's a rare disease that's native or endemic to countries in Central Africa. And the reason it's a public health emergency is because all of a sudden in the spring it started spreading to other countries that basically never have it. And so there's a little map here where the countries that have little orange dots are countries where it's normally not found at all. In the US, we've had a few cases here and there over the past several decades. And then the countries in blue are where it is endemic. And why is it spreading? Well, it likely, the virus that causes it likely had a couple of mutations or changes that caused it to spread more easily among people. That's just conjecture. But it's not a new disease. It's one we know about. It's just one we're not used to here. So just quickly, it does cause illness. So people who get infected with this virus will feel kind of that typical flu-like symptoms, about 3 weeks after they're exposed. And then most people, about 90% of people, a few days later actually develop a really weird rash that kind of looks like pimples or blisters. It often starts on the mouth, but it can happen anywhere. And that takes about 2 to 4 weeks to heal. And so until that rash heals, someone's at risk of spreading it to someone else. And it can be painful. So it spreads by close personal skin-to-skin contact. So this is different than the respiratory illnesses we talk about. And so you have to have really direct contact with it for it to spread person to person or really like share, something like if you're sleeping in the same sheets or something. It's not spread through casual contact. So someone going about their daily business, shaking hands and then washing your hands is not going to be at risk. Who is getting it? Well, globally, there's been almost 60,000 cases in this current outbreak. In the US, we've had almost 22,000 cases. And in Maryland, as of yesterday, there's been 571. On the Eastern Shore, just in the Midshore area, we've had fewer than 5 cases. I say fewer than 5 because there's a couple of cases that have yet to be fully determined. In this county, we haven't had any. So, so luckily, knock on wood, that'll remain the case. It is not a disease that causes a lot of deaths. In fact, the first death in the U.S. occurred today in L.A. In someone who is immunocompromised. And the graph on the right actually shows that through the summer, the cases were increasing, but over the past few weeks, we've started to see them go down, which is good. And we've predominantly been seeing this affecting men, especially men who have sex with men. They tend to be, to me, younger, the 20 to 40s. 96% of cases are occurring in males. And actually, they found that almost 40% of cases are in people who are living with HIV. And so it's that group of people that we want to really make sure are aware of this risk and are seeing healthcare providers and getting the treatment and prevention methods that they need. So should the general public be worried? They should, be alert and informed, but the current risk to general public is actually quite low. And so this is totally different than what we've been talking about the past couple of years with COVID. And so for people who are at higher risk, there's ways to prevent getting infected. Don't avoid skin-to-skin contact with people who have a rash that, is weird and looks like monkeypox. Wash your hands often. That's good advice for lots of things. And then if someone, has been exposed or is concerned that they have a weird rash like this, then it's important they go to a healthcare provider, their own doctor, so that they can be diagnosed, because maybe this rash is chicken pox or shingles or some other illness like that. And they can get tested at their doctor's office. And there's actually some treatment too for people who are at high risk. So there are things we can do to help this. There's a vaccination campaign going on for this. We don't have a lot of vaccines, so it's a very targeted effort. And it's really meant for anyone who's been directly exposed to the monkeypox virus, or someone who's been infected, or someone who's at high risk of exposure and getting sick. So, people with HIV, the population is being infected. And so we've been reaching out to, groups who serve that community. And anyone who is, potentially eligible for vaccination, we only expect about maybe 30,000 people in the entire state to get vaccinated. This is not going to be a massive campaign. And it's been ongoing. We've given some vaccines out. So anyone who's considered eligible, high risk, there's a state website where they can pre-register, and then those individuals get referred to us or their local health department, or they can just call our health department and we can figure out if it's the right thing for that person. So that is just a super quick run through about monkeypox and the news. Not really affecting us locally too much compared to some other places. But just for, we have gotten some questions, and I wanted to allay most people's fear. I have one word just to say about COVID. It's still with us, but in a sort of a different place than we were, several months ago. And there is some news that recently we have a new booster. It's hard to keep up with COVID vaccines at this point, I know, but there is a new one that was approved for use on September 2nd. And so both of the main brands, Pfizer and Moderna, have this new formulation. And basically what they did is they took the old booster, the old vaccine, and they added additional coverage for the variants that we've been seeing since January. And so really the goal with this is to help prevent a sort of fall-winter surge. And so anyone who is 12 and older, who's completed their what we call our primary series of vaccination, is eligible to get this. So for instance, I've gotten my booster, and now I'm eligible to get this other one, because it's been 2 months, a long time since I've gotten my first booster. So if you are a senior over 50 who got, a total of 4 vaccines, you can now get this other one because it offers that extra protection for what's been circulating right now. Where can you get one? We've been getting a lot of calls about this. We have a small supply at the health department. Right now, I think we have received about 600 doses. And so we're offering it in special clinics at our vaccine center, which is over on Marlborough Road in Easton. And then some other pharmacies in the community are also offering it. Giant Hills, Pemberton, and Walgreens are the ones currently offering it. And every place requires an appointment, but you can really make an appointment by showing up, and you may have to wait. So that is basically it for COVID. In the state of Maryland, we continue to have about 1,000 to 1,500 new cases of COVID a day. We're seeing about 500 people hospitalized every day in Maryland. In Talbot County, we're seeing about 8 to 9 new cases every day. And in the each month we see about 10 to 15 people hospitalized. But it's a different scenario than it was, in the previous months, in that we we're allowed to kind of, live our normal lives. It's circulating, but we have enough sort of community immunity that it's not really affecting the systems too much. So I wanted to switch gears and talk about some other fall issues that we see with health. So with the start of fall, we see the start of a new school year, and I just wanted to bring the attention about the importance of our school health program. So there's some interesting things that our school health nurses are engaged in. They're working with the Talbot Emergency Services to try to get more people certified to teach CPR, and our goal is to teach the Talbot County Public Schools teachers and staff CPR. so that everyone is more prepared when there is, again, other emergencies. Right now in our school health program, we have at least one nurse in 7 of our 8 schools in the county. And they completed over 46,000 health office visits in last academic year, including 1,600 hearing and vision screenings for students. And during those screenings, we actually identified 273 students who failed their vision screening. And so we refer those students on to doctors for definitive testing to catch, vision problems. So they're very active in the schools. And one thing they also do is help make sure that students in schools, meet their vaccination requirements for attendance. And what we saw during the past couple years was that children fell behind on preventive care. Vaccination was one of those things that they fell behind on. I put in the upper right, it's a little hard to read, some areas that children fell behind on. Vaccination rates in kids on Medicaid fell about 5%. And actually the most significant drop was in mental health care, which dropped about 23%. And so our school health nurses, they make sure every student who enters is up to date on their vaccination. And so we last year vaccinated 91 children, which accounted for almost 750 vaccination administrations. And a lot of these children are actually uninsured, which is why they come to us. And we, for the first time, hosted mobile vaccination clinics using some vans that we purchased a couple of years ago. And so we went to schools, and that actually had a great turnout. And this is important just to remind everyone because, we risk when we have low vaccination rates, diseases like measles and chicken pox and polio. And you may have heard in the news there was a case of polio in a young gentleman in New York who actually had lower leg paralysis because of it. So we want to make sure we can avoid those issues here. And I mentioned the mobile van services we've been active in, and one thing we've been using our vans for is partnering with our detention center to offer HIV and hepatitis C screening to inmates, and they just started doing this a couple months ago, and so far I've tested 41 inmates, and the good thing about this is for those diseases we can definitely refer to treatment, and in the case of hepatitis C, curative treatment. And so with these vans we've been going out into the community also and doing HIV testing, hepatitis C testing, checking blood pressure, and checking blood sugars too. So we hope to do more of that and get out into the community with our mobile services. I wanted to just, I'm going to skip that page. Also just talk again about behavioral health. So I mentioned how children, we're seeing a decrease in mental health visits during the past couple of years. And so the interesting thing is in the past couple of years we've had more of a need for behavioral health intervention. And this is partly because the mental health system locally and nationally has been really taxed a lot the past couple of years because of, the isolation and the changes in stress from the pandemic. And we already had, a shortage of providers locally and therapists, and just with that increased demand, it's really caused a big burden on people. And unfortunately, what we have been experiencing here is, provider shortages. And then we recently had a major clinic closed too, just on Friday. Officially, 3 of the Eastern Shore Psychological Services locations closed, including one in Easton. And so that left several hundred patients who needed to transition. Fortunately, we're hoping to find new homes for their staff. So several of the stakeholders locally have been meeting weekly to try to ensure as least disruptive a transition for those patients. And of course, here locally, we have a Talbot mental health work group that's been convening the past few months, and I know Councilmember Pack, you've been active in that too, because we're really trying to make sure that especially the young people can receive the mental health and behavioral health interventions that they need. And so I just wanted to close with a couple of other things. Again, in the fall, just a few important reminders. Fall is when we have health insurance open enrollment, and so in November through mid-December, the Maryland Health Connection is open for open enrollment, so people can go onto that website and get the assistance of health insurance navigators to sign up for health insurance. For people who qualify for Medicaid, they can apply any time of year. And the health department, we have a division that actually assists people to apply for and obtain services through Medicaid. We act as a liaison, and it's been extremely busy the past few months. In July alone, we assisted 88 residents with enrollment, and we connected 139 recipients to resources and medical services. And lastly, just wanted to close on a few events that are upcoming. We host a rabies clinic a few times a year. And so we have one planned for Saturday, October 8th. It's going to be a drive-through over at the Bay Street county offices. It's only $6 per animal. And it's important to make sure your pets are vaccinated against rabies, because we do have rabies that circulates mostly in wild animals in Maryland. And actually last year we saw 162 cases in animals. It's the raccoons that seem to be the majority species. So if anyone interacts with a raccoon, be extra careful and seek medical attention. We did have 3 cases of animals who had rabies diagnosed last year, a fox and 2 raccoons. And lastly, I just wanted to finish up and remind everyone that flu season is coming up. And so it's important to get your flu vaccine. The health department will be offering flu vaccination at schools and for the public school staff. And then we'll be doing community clinics. And in November, we'll start offering walk-in clinics for the public in our health department location. So hopefully these reminders and just an overview about some issues about fall health can help everyone stay healthy through the fall. And with that, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks for, I believe, the senior care plan update.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Mr. Pack, anything?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Maguire, thank you very much for your presentation. Very timely as we're entering the fall season, that we stay vigilant as far as our vaccinations. And you mentioned the flu season at the very end. And yes, I want to thank you also for participating in our mental health consortium that we put together, so we can hopefully put a plan in place to deal locally with our mental health concerns. I was looking recently at life expectancy among African Americans, and mental health was one of the 5 contributing factors to early death amongst African Americans, along with heart disease, death, diabetes, and homicide, actually. It's important that we address mental health holistically and get people the help that they need. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Ms. Bryce?
Just want to thank you for everything you've done. It's been a rough couple of years. It's nice to see things the way they are now, and that we are vigilant, but at the same time we're able to live our lives again. So it's nice to have a report from you that doesn't include all of those bad statistics. And but I think it was good to have that update on monkeypox, because people thought it's something different, that maybe it was going to be this big thing like COVID. And, it's a very, targeted place, and that I think that's very reassuring to people. Of course, there's going to be lots of phone calls, and understandably so. So thank you for that update. Hopefully that'll get out so that more people are aware of what that risk really is or is not. So, but thank you for everything. This may be our last Board of Health update with this council. So if I'm sure I will see you, but if I don't see you here, again, thank you for stepping up to the plate at a very difficult time, and it's been very wonderful to work with you.
Well,
Thank you,
so
Ms.
much.
Price. Mr. Novilio?
Thank you for the very comprehensive and efficient presentation. We did hear Dr. Griffith say last year that many of the disruptions in schools, the threats that were called in, were from students who had perfect records and had not been troubled students or anybody that they expected that behavior from. And when you cite a 23% decline in mental health services during the pandemic in children, I can only imagine that getting worse. And there's many people that think that that's just in our schools, it's just our children, we have guidance counselors, we'll be fine. I do call attention to the senior couple who was walking down Washington Street and were assaulted by an individual who was seeking under medical care for mental health services and ended up back in jail. It can happen to any of us at any time, as we don't have facilities in the state that house people for long term for this. So it's an incredible challenge, as many things that we do and have to look at. And I know that you look at things from a very complex situation on how to solve a problem, bringing groups together and partnering with the schools. I appreciate what you're doing there to help the students. And I know that the students are in need as well as the faculty. And I have a lot of anxiety of what the school year is going to look like as we continue through this. But it does give me comfort having somebody with your knowledge and background at the helm of the ship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maguire. Great job tonight. A lot of information, helpful information for people that sort of cleared up a lot of, things that people aren't sure of.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is introduction to, of an administrative resolution. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and get us started on that? That'd be great.
A resolution of Talbot County, Maryland, the county authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds in a principal amount not exceeding $24,900,000 pursuant to the authority of Bill Number 1522, enacted by the County Council of Talbot County on July 26, 2022, the Public Local Law, Section 10203 of the Local Government Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, 2013 Replacement Volume as amended, the Enabling Act, and Section 623 of the Charter of Talbot County, Maryland, the Charter, the bonds to be designated Talbot County Public Improvement Bonds Series 2022, the net proceeds of the sale thereof to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing or refinancing the planning, design, acquisition, renovation, construction, and/or furnishing of a Talbot County Public Safety Building and a Talbot County Health Department, prescribing the form and tenor of the bonds and the terms and conditions for the issuance and sale thereof at private or public sale, including the form of the notice of sale, prescribing the terms and conditions of the bonds and all other details incident to the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds, providing for the disbursement of the proceeds of the bonds, authorizing the preparation and distribution of a preliminary and final official statement in connection with the sale of the bonds, providing for the levy and collection of any taxes necessary for the prompt payment of the maturing principal of and interest on the bonds, and providing that the full faith and credit and taxing power of Talbot County, Maryland shall be pledged to the payment of such principal and interest, subject to the limitation on the tax levy set out in Section 614 of the Charter of Talbot County, and generally relating to the issuance, sale, delivery, and payment of the bonds.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Angela?
Okay, good
You
evening,
want,
Council.
you want to explain all that?
Yes. Actually, they laid out everything in the
Okay.
little first paragraph. This is the final piece that Council needs to act on in order for the county to sell our bonds. The administrative resolution, as it said, has all the general information about the bonds, the term of the bonds, the use of the bonds, how the bonds are going to be sold, how individuals who ultimately purchase these bonds will be paid, how bonds could be redeemed if the county chooses to redeem them at some point. This document is sort of the Bible of what happens to get to a bond sale and after a bond sale. So everything is outlined in this administrative resolution. Obviously, it's general at this point. We don't have any specific information until pretty much after the bonds are sold. But this lays out the general terms for everything associated with the bond sale and after the bonds are issued. In terms of our timing, Council needs to approve this administrative resolution. We plan to sell our bonds on Thursday, September 29th and then we will settle 2 weeks after that.
Okay, that sounds great. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, any other, do you
Okay.
need any other information?
No, I mean,
We're good.
as you said before, Ms. Lane, this is the last step so we can go forward in these capital projects that this council has been laying out for the last 4 years, that we knew that this day was going to come. You know, we need to build a new public safety center, to move our sheriff's department out of the business center. Dr. Maguire was just here recently, just here before you. We need to find them a new home. The building that they're currently in is an aged building. It have some issues. Let me just put it that way. And so we would like to get our health department in some new surroundings for the near future. So we knew this day was going to come. This is just that next step to get those bonds issued so we can go on with our building project. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Callahan, as this is an administrative resolution, this is eligible for vote this evening. I would ask that the matter be moved to a vote tonight.
Should we have to introduce it first?
Thought, no, we did not. Okay,
Right, so I guess we
I
have to-
apologize. I'm moving too fast.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Is there a motion?
I think it's just,
This introduction.
Introduction
Yeah.
by Haynes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Council.
And now, since it's introduced,
It's all right. It's okay.
we're just
I'll-
trying to be efficient.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
no,
okay.
you are absolutely correct. It has to be introduced first.
Okay.
I would ask that as it is an administrative resolution, Mr. Callahan, that we move it to vote tonight.
Second
Okay.
that.
Okay, got a motion second to move it to vote. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Thank you very much,
All right.
council.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Okay. Just a reminder for people that are here for the public hearing, we are going to keep the public hearing open tonight. There's not going to be any voting on any of the bills tonight, so just want to let you know. Okay. Madam Secretary, introduction of number resolution. Can you go ahead and do that for us, please?
A resolution to amend the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan for the purpose of reclassifying and remapping certain real property located at 4480 Bachelors Point Road, Oxford, Maryland, shown on tax map 53 as parcel 77, from W2 and S2 to W1 and S1, immediate priority status for water and sewer service from the Oxford Water and Wastewater System.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Clark, you want to come on up? Just do an overview of what we're thinking here with the resolution.
Yes, Mr. Callahan, this is actually an application we received from the town of Oxford for a parcel on Bachelors Point Road. Ultimately, it's being increased in the classification from, let's say, a final planning, or I'm not, sorry, not final, but planning for water and sewer service in 3 to 5 years. This would be taking it to immediate priority status as S1, W1. Again, we did receive the application from the town, so the town is, I believe, supportive of this moving forward.
Okay, that sounds good. So, we want to go ahead and,
So is this part of like the quarterly update,
This is, yes,
introductions
ma'am.
for comprehensive water and sewer plans?
Yeah, we moved it up to the first of the month, so yes, this is part of that quarterly update.
Okay.
so we want to go ahead and introduce this? Yep, raise our hand, show of hands. Mr. Pack, show of hands. You all right over there? Okay, that's okay, all right. Okay. Okay, that's good.
Do you want the public hearing date?
Yes.
This will be known as Resolution Number 335, and the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, October 11th at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay. All right. Next.
A resolution to amend the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan for the purpose of adding or modifying the Talbot County Capital Project for fiscal years 2023 and 2024 to add a new capital project in the amount of $4.718 million for water system improvements for the town of Oxford.
Mr.
Mr.
Clark?
Mr.
Yep,
Count, again,
yep.
the county received an application from the town. This is basically for their capital project for the water system. Just so the council knows, as well as the general public, for, I guess, the town to apply for funding through the Maryland Department of the Environment, they have to amend the comp water and sewer plan. So this is the action they're taking at this point in time, is to amend the comp water and sewer plan to include this capital project so that they can then proceed for funding with MDE at the end of January.
Okay, that sounds good. Can I show a hands of introducing? Okay, Madam Secretary, could you announce the number and the time?
This will be resolution number 336, and the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, October 11th at 6:30 PM.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, let's move on to the public hearing. When you get straight, Madam Secretary, you can go ahead and read Resolution 333.
Resolution 333, a resolution to approve amended rules of procedure of the Talbot County Board of Appeals.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, you want to go ahead and go over that, please?
Sure. So under both the charter and the county code, the Board of Appeals has the authority to adopt rules of procedure that are subject to approval by the county council. They have existing rules of procedure, but this has been in the works for some time as a comprehensive revisions and to clean up some inconsistencies and bring it into conformity with their practice. So this has been reviewed and revised by the board. They've approved it, so now they've submitted it to the county council for approval.
Okay, that sounds great. So I guess at this time, I'm going to open it to the public hearing, and we're going to give you 3 minutes for individual and 5 minutes if you're representing somebody. So I guess we'll start over here on my left if anybody wants to come on up. Okay. Anybody here on my right want to come on up and talk about 333?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Frank Cavanaugh, Chairman of the Talbot County Board of Appeals, and joining me is Lou Dorsey, our Vice Chairman.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you. The Board of Appeals Rules of Procedure was last updated in June of 2007. In the past 15 years, many of our procedures have changed. So in 2019, the board began the process of reviewing and revising this document. The onset of the COVID pandemic caused us to delay our efforts. In July of 2022, we completed this review and made revisions to our rules of procedure. These revised rules now before you include all of the current procedures now being used. A major change is the way forms and applications are submitted. Now all of this is done using the county's website. During this review process, we had much help and input from the Planning and Zoning Director, along with numerous county staff and advice and direction from the county attorneys. Thank you for considering Resolution 333 and to accept these amended rules. The members of the Board of Appeals ask that you approve these revised rules of procedure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
No,
Okay.
no, actually, no, I do have one. You mentioned the application process and doing that online through the county website. Were there any other major changes to the rules and procedures besides that one?
I don't think there were any major, a lot of cleaning up language, a lot of things that the number of forms that we need. There were a lot of minute details that had changed over the 15 years. I think we simplified some of the language. We clarified some of our definitions. We tried to make it easier for an applicant to understand the rules. So I think even though we did do a lot of changes, a lot of editing words, so to speak, I don't think there were any substantial legal changes. I think we just brought it up to date.
No, I think there were definitely some conflicting terms and some things that were just very confusing in there that we wanted to clean up and make it easier for everybody to understand and follow.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys, appreciate it. Okay, at this time, council's preference, do we want to leave this open, or are we ready to go ahead and, we're going to keep this open, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we're going to keep that open.
Right, just said that. We're gonna keep
Yep.
them all open.
Yep. All right. All right, Madam Secretary, could you read the next resolution, 334?
Resolution number 334, a resolution to amend resolution number 175, a resolution to establish sewer service connection policies from the Unionville, Tunis Mills, and Copperville sewer service area, low-pressure force main collection system to the Royal Oak Pump Station for the purpose of exempting county governmental uses and services from the provisions thereof, subject to certain conditions.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay. Mr. Clark, you want to come on up?
Sure thing.
Yep, thank you.
Very quickly, again, I think in our, when this was introduced, just let the council know, we do have along the force main route from Unionville to the Royal Oak Pump Station, which is at Maryland 329 and 33. We have actually a total of 5 parcels that are county-owned. 3 of those parcels are actually owned or in the sanitary district. One's the Unionville Pump Station, the other one's the Royal Oak Pump Station, and then we have the Oak Creek Landing that's also in the sewer service area. However, we do have 2 parcels that are up by the pin cushion. There's the, I guess, the ag field that was owned by, or I guess was kind of associated with Carroll's Market. And then beyond that, we have, I guess, some Glebe, along Glebe Road, we have some residential properties. And just behind those properties, we also have a piece of county-owned property that abuts along that route, the force main route. In addition, what we do is we also have the repurposing facility, but that's not really on the force main. However, this would, I guess the proposed change would allow the county to go ahead and move forward with, let's say, extending sewer to those government properties. If you all feel that that's necessary. At the same time, I will say that we are for the repurposing facility. We are doing soil testing for an on-site sewage disposal system at this time, so we're not proposing anything for the repurposing facility.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Clark, I appreciate it.
Questions?
Yep, go ahead.
Do we know when we're gonna get those soil tests back on that property?
I'm trying, so I
Well,
think.
ballpark, I mean, another couple weeks, a couple months?
I'm going to say give us another couple months, maybe 2 to 3 months.
Okay, so that's not gonna be this council then?
I know. So it's going to be I don't think it's going to happen before then. Let me put it that way. I think we're still going through the soil testing. One of the problems we've run into is it is a very wet area, and part of the problem has been that with environmental health, there is a prohibition on burned infiltration ponds. So that's a potential system that cannot be utilized. So they've been looking at other systems that can be.
And so the first 3 properties that you mentioned are plants, so you wouldn't need to run sewer to those first 3 that you mentioned.
Correct.
Right? The other property that we picked up with POS, or to replace some of the POS land out by the community center, needs to stay open. We can't do anything other than some passive type things, so we wouldn't need to run sewer to that. Obviously, unless we were going to develop the property, then you'd have to find some other POS land to replace it. And then there's a repurposing center, and then you mentioned one more that abuts some residential.
There's another property we're finding that's right behind the residential properties. I'm not sure how the county came about of acquiring that. So there is a property right behind the Glebe, the houses that are along Glebe Road. As you're going down the pincushion towards Unionville, there's houses along Glebe Road. Just beyond those houses is also a county-owned property.
Okay, just doesn't seem like there's anything to connect other than one potential
Right,
thing.
and I think the question would be is if the council at some point in the future decided that, let's say they wanted to put a bathroom for the park or something of that nature, they could possibly.
Could always come and do it at that time.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily need to be done now, because we don't have a specific project. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, I'll open it up, public hearing, so you'll have 3 minutes as individuals and 5 minutes of representing somebody on Resolution 334. So here to my left is somebody would like, yes sir, come on up.
Good evening, Mr.
Good evening.
Chairman, lady,
Good evening.
gentlemen. Tom Hughes, Shinar Farm, Easton, Maryland. Some of you may recall I was on the Planning Commission for 10 years and also its chairman. I was on the Planning Commission, and this is by way of background, when Resolution 175 was originally drafted, unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission and unanimously approved by the council. I have tried to boil my comments down to 3 minutes. It's all on one page, so I hope you'll give me a few seconds so I can get through this one page.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have been following the Royal Oak and Unionville sewer line issue for more than 30 years, and would wager I have more knowledge of this matter than anyone still standing. I oppose Resolution 334 or any similar amendments to Resolution 175. The Unionville sewer issue in the early 1990s was the first time I took more than a passing interest in local politics. The public was concerned that the plan for a wastewater plant in Unionville with the discharge under the Miles River Bridge was really a boondoggle to open up the interior of Miles River Neck to development. After many meetings and spirited public hearings, a far better alternative was settled on than the ones being considered by the county, state, and assorted consultants. This alternative was to run a pipe from Unionville to the existing pump station at Royal Oak. During those lengthy deliberations, the public was repeatedly told that the new sewer line would not, and indeed could not, be used to foster growth. When the county asked for state and federal grants, the county was told, per a November 5th, 1993 letter from the Maryland Department of Planning, that their request was inconsistent with state law unless they agreed that, quote, the force main will be designed to accommodate flows only from the Unionville, Tunis Mills, Copperville service areas as identified, and two, any existing homes along the force main route that have a septic system with the potential for failure. Subsequently, the county passed a resolution on November 13th, 1993 with the identical provisions and guarantees. There was never any mention of ever allowing the Unionville line to be used part of a grandiose sewer system running from Easton's boundary all the way to Bar Neck. Indeed, both the Maryland Department of Planning letter and the county's 1993 resolution clearly specify that the line would only be, quote, designed to accommodate, close quote, flows from the named villages and existing homes along the line with failing septic systems. This subject has come up again and again over the past decades, and I have had to remind people of the strict limitations placed on the Unionville line over and over again. From time to time, former county attorney Mr. Pullen referenced the facts I presented in official findings made by the Planning Commission. Please read the 2014 Planning Commission's findings written by Mr. Pullen that I will submit for the record, as well as a piece that was published on the 24th of August in the Talbot Spy.
10 seconds.
Resolution 175, as it stands today, is perfectly consistent with the law and the original purpose of the line, and it must not be changed. Eventually, in order to hook up the county's repurposing center, a water and sewer plan amendment will have to be scrutinized and approved by the Planning Commission for multiple reasons, even besides the ones I have already mentioned. If they follow the law, such an amendment will be turned down. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
And
Mr. Hughes.
I'd like all the supporting documents to be put in the record as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Anybody here? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Corey, I'll let you keep talking. You can keep talking.
Jermaine Wills. Hello, I live on Lee Haven Road in Easton.
Okay.
And that gentleman has just become my hero to lay into the record the detail to which, as a resident, I don't have the full details of. But I'm here to voice concern of residents down Lee Haven Road, some of whom have written letters to the council, part of which I will just lay out. It is very short. We express opposition to the allowing of government entities to connect to the repurposing centre, to connect the sewer. Sorry, I might have got that a bit mixed up. 3 concerns. If approved, it lays the groundwork for further development. I think I'm just repeating what this fine gentleman before me said. It lays out the proposition for further development, which is directly counter to the principles of the comprehensive plan. And as he said, I won't go into the detail, that it would, we believe it requires going back to the Planning Commission. So I just want to be the voice and the face of concerned residents down Lee Haven Road who already deal with and have been involved in accidents from the increased traffic that is already down St Michael's Road, and the repurposing centre and the driveway that was put there has already caused concerns for us who turn left and right down Lee Haven Road, and the development that's happening down Lee Haven Road is only going to increase it by itself. So we have grave concerns for the expansion that this would make possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, anybody else on my left here? Okay, anybody on my right here that wants to come up and talk about 335 or 34? I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Excuse me. Good evening, council members. Tom Allsbach for Talbot Preservation Alliance. We believe that this particular resolution is premature and unnecessary at this time, and further that it is a rather dangerous precedent to go about amending an existing resolution that's been in place for some time and for important reasons without an amendment that is in the context of a specific project, so that we can evaluate how a project that's being considered would impact the restrictions that are now in 175. Now, I've heard from the outset this is not supposed to be a site-specific proposal, and it could apply anywhere, but it's really difficult to buy that. This looks very much like a proposal in order to expedite and remove barriers from the connection of the sewer line to the repurposing facility. Why do I say that? You can look at the documentation and pretty much see it for yourself. 334 would eliminate certain restrictions in 175 presently in place that would effectively prohibit the connection of the repurposing center to the Unionville sewer line. For example, in section 2C small III in 175, one cannot connect a property that through which unless it's a property through which the force main passes, and unless there are unless the proposed parcel is contiguous to that property. And more importantly, the next section says, in current restrictions on 175, no property may be connected through any other parcel or properties, which of course is the main impediment right now to connecting the repurposing center down to Unionville, because of the multiple parcels it would have to go through. So to correct this, we think that if there is to be a proposal once again to connect the repurposing center to Unionville, that's the context in which a proposed resolution or amendment to the comprehensive plan should come up, not in the abstract where there's no reference at all to the parcels that will be affected by this revision. Now, it has been said that the protection here is that, I heard this at the introduction of this legislation or resolution, that the county water and sewer plan would still have to be factored into any proposal to connect the repurposing center to the Unionville line. Is that 5 minutes?
3.
I have 5.
It's 5, TPA.
Keep going.
But that's really not true, because this proposed 334 eliminates that protection of the county water and sewer plan. What 175 says at section 9 is that approval of any connection to the force main shall be by amendment to the county water and sewer plan that remaps the property proposed for service to S1. So that appears like a restriction, a limitation on the county to connect unless that happens. But what does this 334 do? It says that nothing herein, and the herein is what I just read to you, nothing herein shall be deemed to limit the county's authority to connect to the force main in order to provide sewer service to any property used for county government uses or services. So this takes away the limitation that you have to comply with the county water and sewer plan in order to connect. This just purports to give the county the right to connect, and that's not right. It should be done in the context of a project. It should be required to go through the county water and sewer plan, and it shouldn't be done in this premature fashion when no specific project is on the table. Putting that sewer line down St. Michael's Road, I've heard all the comments. We're not opening up to development. It's going to put inexorable pressure on the use of that pipe for others to tap into it. There's all those farm fields on St. Michael's Road between Town and Country Liquors and the Pincushion that there are those out there who would love to develop. And with a sewer line running down that road, the pressure is going to be intense to let that happen. And by the way, there's no other private business in Talbot County. This is discriminatory. I mean, Town and Country Liquors can't connect to the pipe down St. Michael's Road, but the repurposing center could if you adopt this resolution that's before you tonight. So my plea to you is to not pass this resolution now, defer passage until such a time as there's a specific project that you want to have considered for expansion of the sewer service area, and let this idea of connecting other parcels to the sewer line be considered in the context of a specific project where the pros and cons of that project can be weighed, rather than granting what amounts to carte blanche in the abstract in advance to connect by way of a resolution like this 334 that puts no restrictions on the connection to the existing Unionville line. So those are my comments, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osbach.
Okay. Yes, come on up.
Mr. President, members
Yes.
of council, my name is Alan Gerard. I'm with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation here in opposition to Resolution 334. Just 3 quick points. The matter of whether this line from Unionville to Royal Oak is a dedicated line has been settled as a matter of policy under Resolutions 175. The previous speakers made that clear. That policy should stand. The second points relate to what are the alternatives to serve the repurposing center, which really seems to be the underlying issue. We were contacted by the Public Works Advisory Board, who advises Ray Clark and the Department of Public Works on issues of policy and programs and capital investments in the county, about the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's composting toilets, which serve many of our facilities throughout the Chesapeake Bay area. Our building out in Annapolis was built in 2001, at the time was one of the greenest buildings according to the standards in the country. We have over a dozen composting toilets at that facility. There's over 100 people that work in the building, and they work without on-site sewage disposal services or centralized sewer that connects the building to the centralized system in Annapolis. So that is a viable alternative that, again, the Public Works Advisory Board asked us to comment on. I don't know if that has been pursued as an option to help serve the repurposing facility, but that is something that I would suggest be fully considered and reported on before a decision is made. So I'd urge you to defer a decision on that for that reason, and for the reason that Ms. Price commented on at the beginning of this hearing, and that is, what is the status of the on-site sewage disposal alternative at the repurposing facility? Has the perk test come in? Is the on-site sewer disposal system an option for that facility? And if you don't have the answer to that question, then you should wait for it before you act on this resolution, excuse me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What was the context of the Public Works Advisory Board contacting you on that?
The chairman gave me a call. I knew this issue had come up earlier, maybe about a year ago. Forgive me, I don't recall the context exactly. It was, they contacted me about that and wanted information about our composting systems. Again, we have those at our facility in Annapolis and at our education facilities here on the shore and elsewhere. System that works, we advised the board on that. And again, I don't know if the Public Works team has taken up our comments on that. Actually offered a tour of our facilities to see if that's an alternative. I don't know that that tour was ever done.
Mr. Clark, was that something that we had asked for?
I think during the Public Works Advisory Board meetings that we've had talked about is there has been a push to try and use a composting toilet. In reviewing that with environmental health, they require that we have to have a platted SDA, a sewage disposal area. So that's, right now we've got to have that done before we could ever pursue a composting toilet through environmental health. So it's been a process for us.
And has the council sent this down to the Public Works Advisory Board to investigate sewer options or septic options at that facility?
We are currently in the process of, we are working with Accurate Environmental, who's working on the soil testing for doing an on-site sewage disposal system or septic system for the repurposing facility. Again, based upon discussions of a composting toilet, we have a talk with environmental health about that. Unfortunately, we have to have an approved SDA, a sewage disposal area, and that's what we're working with environmental health on, is we got to have that before we can start a selection process of our unit or what we're going to propose.
Would they, if the perk test doesn't come back to allow for some type of septic disposal, does that mean they would not allow the composting toilets, that they wouldn't approve an SDA so that we could possibly do composting toilets?
And that would be something we'd have to review with environmental health. I know the one issue that we're running into at the repurposing facility is it's a high groundwater situation. So there's a lot of groundwater that we're dealing with. So we don't really have a treatment zone per se. So let's say you put a shovel in the ground, you might be running in the groundwater about 2 to 3 feet below the surface. So that's one of the issues we're up against right now. So there has been talk with environmental health about basically doing what they call a raised bed concept, things like that. But yeah, those are the things we're trying to work through right now.
Sorry, I know this is off topic, but if I would just like to follow up after the meeting or later this week about how the Public Works Advisory Board received this information to investigate and give a response back.
I think that was coming about the time when we were looking at we were discussing, I guess, amending the Compton sewer plan for bringing sewer to the repurposing facility. And I think at that point in time, that was we did not pursue that. We decided to move forward with going with the on-site sewage disposal system and the soil testing evaluations.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else would like to speak on 334? Okay. I don't know if anybody's outside. Do we have a sign-up sheet or anything that I see people standing outside? If anybody, yeah, yeah. Would you mind to see if if anybody had to want to talk
there
about
are
it?
seats available inside
Yeah.
if they'd like to come in.
Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and keep the public hearing open for 334. Okay. Madam Secretary, could we go ahead and move on to Bill 1523, please?
Bill number 1523, a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development, to add a definition of country club and to provide for the expansion and major modification of a non-conforming country club in the Resource Conservation RC District.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thomas, you want to go ahead and?
Sure, we can have Brendan
Yeah,
come up
Brendan,
as well.
you want to come up for a second, please? How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, good.
Council, Bryce
Yes.
Yelton, Planning and Zoning.
Yes?
This bill essentially adds a definition to the Talbot County Code that would add a definition for a country club. Currently in our code, golf courses and country clubs are combined in our land use table. And this would allow for those non-conforming country clubs that would now be enumerated under our code to expand into their RC district zones where their golf courses currently are. And so that's, that would add for non-conforming uses. So that's use that's been continued either through a special exception or throughout through history, as long as it hasn't been discontinued for 12 months or more. And it would still be subject to site plan approval and any other approvals that it would need.
Okay. Okay. Brendan, you want to say anything? Are you good?
No, this was originally introduced to you, and we kind of explained the exact scope of what Bryce
Sure.
just touched on there. The Planning Commission provided a favorable recommendation to you all for consideration for this as well. As Bryce stated, this would allow for the expansion of existing non-conforming golf courses on the country club side of things that have been given that designation. To my knowledge and within our research of doing so, there's only 2 that exist within the county today that this would be applicable to. Other than that, that's really all we have for you.
All right. Okay. Council, do you have any questions for them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody that wants to speak on it, 3 minutes individual and 5 minutes for the group.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, come on up.
I'm Murray Parker. I represent Talbot Country Club, which formed the application for this text amendment. A little background, if I might, and I'll try not to take my full 5 minutes, Mr. Pack. Talbot Country Club was started in Talbot County in 1910. It is the oldest country club on the Delmarva Peninsula and the 4th or 5th oldest country club in the state of Maryland. It's been in continuing existence in the area between Old Country Club Road and Bailey's Neck Road, and then it expanded more than 60 years ago to an 18-hole golf course and a clubhouse on Country Club Road. It employs more than 39 full-time employees and 94 seasonal employees, has an annual payroll of $2.5 million, and serves over 1,500 family members in the county. The property owned by Talbot Country Club consists of 194 acres, and it spans 3 different zoning districts. The RR, or Rural Residential Zoning District, is 8 acres of the property. That's where the clubhouse is, the swimming pool, tennis courts. The RC zone property is nearly 100 acres of the property. And there are fringes of the area that border the properties on Canterbury Drive and Old Country Club Road that are in the western rural conservation area of the WRC district. Only the RR zone zoning district has country clubs as permitted uses, although there was never a definition of a country club in the ordinance. There was a definition of a golf course. I think that that was an oversight that needs to be corrected by this bill. What will this bill mean and what's its possible effect. It will mean that a non-conforming country club of 110 years old in the case of Talbot Country Club will have the right to seek approval from the Talbot County Board of Appeals to expand or modify its non-conforming use, country club use, on its 95 acres of RC zone land. It doesn't mean that you're approving any expansion or modification. It paves the way for the right of Talbot Country Club to seek permission from the Talbot County Board of Appeals for possible expansion or modification of country club amenities, structures, and uses. So that is something that was substantially limited by the current ordinance that only allowed the in-play area of a golf course to be changed or modified in some way. So it didn't really address what a country club is, because country clubs are much more than just a golf course. And a golf course is only one portion of the use and amenities of a country club. So that's how it will affect the county going forward, to have this amendment to the zoning text. And we ask that it be approved. As you know, and as Bryson and Brennan indicated, staff has recommended in favor of it, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended the adoption of this text amendment. Be happy to answer any questions. Rob McWilliams of Talbot Country Club's general manager is here, and if you have any questions about the history of the club, we're happy to answer them.
Okay. Council, we're good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, anybody else on this side? Yes, sir.
Tom Hughes again, Shinar Farm, Easton, Maryland, former member of the Planning Commission. I was on the Planning Commission after the 2005 comprehensive plan was passed. The Planning Commission undertook a major rewrite of the entire zoning ordinance, which ended up taking a couple of years. We went through the whole thing line by line, using, of course, the comprehensive plan as a guide. It is not a mistake that country clubs are not allowed in the RC zone. The RC zone is the most restrictive zone in our code. It is required by the critical area law of the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland controls what happens in a critical area, not this county, believe it or not. And country clubs, as a result, are an intensive use. They're not consistent with the description of a resource conservation area or the resource conservation zone. Furthermore, this looks to me like spot zoning. Unless there's been a mistake, and I contend there was no mistake when country club was left out of the zoning ordinance, or a change in the neighborhood, you just can't willy-nilly change the zoning classification of a parcel without the comprehensive plan, the new comprehensive plan, indicating that such is necessitated. And finally, what I'm really worried about long-term, if you make country clubs permitted by right in the resource conservation zone, assuming the Critical Area Commission is even going to approve that, you're going to open up a can of worms with all these waterfront places that are now pretending to be short-term rentals. All of a sudden, hey, and this would be a bonanza for me. I could turn my farm into a country club. I could cash out. But I wouldn't do that. But that's what you're looking at if you allow country clubs by right in the critical area. Thank you, and I'll submit this for the record.
Okay.
I've got a-
In my time remaining, I think I may have a minute left, if I can just respond. There is nothing in this text amendment that seeks to make country clubs permitted uses in the RC zone.
Can you sit back down by your microphone,
The
please?
only thing this text amendment does is allow a non-conforming country club in the RC zone to seek approval from the Board of Appeals to make modifications to its use and structures. That's all it does. We're not rezoning any property. We're not making country clubs permitted in the RC zone. There are country clubs that are already there and have been there historically. They're grandfathered uses, and they should have the same rights as other grandfathered uses to make modifications to keep up with the times. That's all this does.
Go ahead,
So-
Ms. Price.
Yeah. Question, I'm gonna pull up an email here. I know that you basically have said that you don't have anything specific in mind as for the purpose of the text amendment, but you probably do, right? So what type of things are you considering? Now, again, it would have to go in front of the Board of Appeals. I understand that. But just maybe to allay some people's fears, what might it be? Another tennis court, pickleball? I think county's going to do some pickleball. Or, what might it be? An expanded swimming pool?
I think that.
Or the manager, Rob, may be able to answer?
Some racket sport area might be something in the long-range plan. There is an existing tennis court in the RR zone where country clubs are permitted, and those could be repurposed into pickleball courts. And then the question is, where do we put tennis courts? Likely, they could either go in the WRC zone land or the RC zone land, or partly on each. It depends on the layout and the area that's appropriate to meet appropriate setbacks, meet environmental requirements that the Board of Appeals will make us meet as part of the elements of seeking and getting approval for a modification of the special exception. But most likely it's amenities such as racket sports or bocce courts or things of that nature.
Because there's some language in here about setbacks, I guess, from the water because it's in the critical area and not doing too much more impervious surface, right?
Right. We're not seeking to increase impervious surfaces beyond allowable limits in the RC zone, nor are we seeking to have a text amendment that wouldn't protect perennial streams and the waterfront and buffer areas. We're not seeking any of that. We just want to have the permission that other commercial grandfathered uses have in this county to expand and modify with the times.
Or at least ask to do so. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Anybody over here to my left want to go ahead and comment on 1523? Okay, go over here to my right. Anybody like to come up here and comment on that? Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave that open. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read Bill 1524?
Bill number 1524, a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development regarding solar energy systems.
Okay. All right. You guys want to come on up? Yep. How's it going, Brandon?
My apologies. Did you want to speak about the original amendment that was before you or the
Well, could you-
proposed
could
amendment
you-
that was
could
introduced
you-
by Mr. Lesher?
State your position, your name, so everybody
Yes,
knows. Yeah.
Brennan Tarleton, Acting Director for Planning and Zoning.
Okay, that's great. All right then. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Thomas? Are you good?
I'm good. I'll defer to Brennan.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, go ahead.
So essentially what you had before you originally for the amendment for the solar energy systems section, particularly large-scale solar energy systems within our code, was to allow for offset payments to be contributed to the MALPF program that we currently have with the county that we participate in that I believe you all heard a little bit about and will hear more about this evening, which would allow the county essentially to contribute a larger amount into the funding program for that matching system that they have on an annual basis. Currently, that system works on a 60-40 basis. Therefore, when the county contributes a certain amount, the MALPF program will contribute an equaling 60% of that amount for a funding cycle to be utilized in the next year for farms that are ranked by the county and sent up to MALPF for approval. If those farms are accepted, then they go into and the offers are accepted, they go into protective easements in perpetuity, therefore ultimately preserving that farm, not allowing for any additional development such as a solar energy system. So it's a way for the county to contribute to a funding source that would allow for preservation of future properties and agricultural lands to come. Additional legislation or regulations were added in there with regards to the clearing of topsoil on site, as well as some of the removal of some of the existing facilities on site once the solar energy system was decommissioned as well. After that, I believe Councilman Lesher proposed an additional amendment to that language that include the ranking of properties and what would be classified and qualified to be utilized and proposed for solar energy systems. If those applications for those properties proposing large-scale solar energy systems scored over that certain amount based on the system that we currently use to rank those applications, then they would not essentially be eligible for large-scale solar energy systems to be put into place because they would be deemed to be private agricultural lands.
Okay. Council, you got any questions before we start the public hearing?
Brennan,
Yep.
the offset, and that would be the payments that the company is making to the county. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that offset payment would be calculated based on the scope of the area and the acreage utilized for the large-scale system proposed. That money would go into the county's funding source that gets annually sent up through to the MALPF funding program. Currently, we contribute a little bit over what the minimum requirement is to participate in that program. So it would allow the county to be a little bit more competitive in that program and contribute a little bit more, thus allowing the matching funds to be significantly larger from MALPF as well for some farms and to allow for potentially more offers in a funding cycle than we currently receive today.
Okay.
Is that it, Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Price, you have any right now? Mr. Villiel, got anything right now? Okay, so, all right, thank you. So I'll go ahead and open it up to the public hearing. Like I said, it's 3 minutes for individuals and 5 minutes for if you're representing somebody. So I want to start right over here. If anybody wants to come up and talk about 1524.
Thank you, President Callahan.
Yep.
Members of the council, Ryan Showalter, 100 Northwest Street, Easton, Maryland.
Okay.
I'm here really to focus my comments on amendment number 1. As you know, I've participated, I think, in every council meeting and planning commission meeting since the moratorium was adopted. And the bill itself is, I think, a good work product. It was reviewed significantly by the planning commission. They received input from a lot of different stakeholders. Balanced interest, and I think it's a fair bill. I'm not here to oppose amendment number 1, but I'm here to suggest that it requires more thought. And first, I'd like to just note a procedural issue. Amendment 1 is a substantive change from what the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended. So I don't think this council can adopt a substantive amendment without receiving a recommendation from the Planning Commission. But I'd like to draw to your attention just a few examples of I think, questions that need to be evaluated and understood. And the first is just a basic question about the threshold number. This amendment number 1 uses 240 points as the threshold or cutoff for land to be used for larger scale solar. I don't know where that number originates from and whether that's appropriate or whether it should be 245 or 260. So I think there should be discussion about how that number was chosen. And when you look at the county has a spreadsheet. There's an Excel spreadsheet with formatting which is focused on the preservation, the ranking of ag land for making offers for preservation easements. There's one area which deals with stewardship practices that is excluded by your amendment. But there are a couple of other areas that are not well defined, and I think there's one that is inconsistent with what is probably the county's preference. And so one of those components, section number 4, provides points based on the woodland acres preserved. The more acreage that you preserve, the more points you get. And as I read that, it's not entirely clear whether woodland acres preserved in this context means woods that are actually imposed with some type of permanent protection, or whether that's just woods that are not cleared or proposed for development. But either way, the larger that number is, the higher the number of points. So you're disincentivizing a landowner. You know, you're telling a landowner, if you save 50 acres of woods, you score 20 points, which makes your property less likely to be able to use for this. And I think that either that scale shouldn't be included or it should be reversed, so that you get fewer points. The more woods you're disturbing, you get more points for the more woods that you're disturbing. So if you're disturbing woods, it would reduce the likelihood that you could use that property. I think if you adopt this current formula, you're actually disincentivizing the protection of woodland, which doesn't make sense to me. The second area that I'll just flag for additional discussion is you have a category that looks at the concentration of conserved lands. It's not defined in the county spreadsheet, and based on some discussions I've had with county staff, it's not entirely clear how that's applied. In other counties, I've seen a reference to assigning points based on the number of acres within a defined radius, a 1 mile radius of the property. It's not clear whether those are only permanent easements that get considered as conserved lands, whether CRP or CREP gets considered, whether land that is partially in and partially out of that defined radius counts for the entire parcel or only the acreage within the defined dimension. But I think if you're going to adopt a formula for a regulatory purpose, you need clear definitions so that people can understand what the rules are and they can be applied fairly. So again, I'm not opposing amendment number 1, but I think it's premature because I think there are a number of details that need to be fleshed out before it's adopted as a regulatory measure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sherwaters. Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Scott Williams. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of my father-in-law, Gordon Behrens. Gordon was born and raised in Talbot County. He's 85 years old and is a second-generation farmer. I'm here to tell you that he supports Bill 1524 as written. He supports the way it was created over several months and meetings with input from all stakeholders. I'm also here to tell you that he does not support Amendment number 1 to 1524. Amendment number 1 was not created with the input from all stakeholders, was not vetted by the Planning Commission. It almost feels as if Amendment number 1 was dropped on us at the last minute and is being sneaked through in the dark of the night. This is not the way a bill or an amendment should be created. As a second-generation farmer, I can tell you that, or my father-in-law, that farmers work hard. They spend countless hours and vast sums of money to take good care of their land, to be good stewards of their land. And there is no one who cares more about their land than a farmer. So why in the world would we introduce an amendment that penalizes them for their life's hard work to improve the quality of their farms by telling them that their farms are too good to be able to be used for a solar farm? Where is the equity in that? We take some issue with the presumptions that are used, what feels like used to create this amendment, or purports to address the concerns. Most importantly, farmland is not lost forever. At most, it will be withdrawn from agricultural use for a period of 35 years, not forever. The underlying zoning is not changed. The land is not developed with houses or retail. Secondly, the notion that all farmland will be covered over by solar farms is patently false, and I'm quite sure we all know this. it takes years to get a project permitted and approved. There's little excess capacity on the distribution lines in the grid for new projects and improvements to the grid that will allow for future solar projects is years away and hundreds of millions of dollars away. Critically, and I hope everybody will take the time to learn this, farming or agriculture and solar are not mutually exclusive. They do coexist. So the ag land is not lost. This is the true win-win, and the truth that's not discussed here. There was a front page article in the Wall Street Journal on 9/6, on the 9/6 edition, that speaks to the coexisting of both agriculture and solar. I beg that you all read it. I'm sure that you've all seen the panels in front of the Calhoun Engineering School, or MEBA. I have to admit, last summer when I was driving past it, looked over and didn't see the panels, and ashamedly asked somebody where they went. They were there. They were just hidden by the corn. That's a prime example of agricultural and solar coexisting in the same piece of ground. I think it's critically important that everybody understands that the two do work together, and they do so all day and every day. And I think the most important point that we want to make is solar leases provide farmers with an option to diversify their farming incomes, to allow them to generate money if they have bad droughts or too much water. Solar leases will make it easier for families, for third and fourth generation farmers, to maintain ownership of their farms and not to see them broken up. Will be important to my father-in-law's plans. My father-in-law said to me yesterday, "My land is my 401k. It's my pension. It's my retirement. Why do they want to take away the value of my farmland now?" Where is the equity in that? Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else would like to get up on this side, on my left here? Talk about 1524? Okay. Switch over here to, yes, come on up. Come on up, Zach.
Good evening, Council. Zach Smith on behalf of Soul Harvest Energy.
You got a gentleman coming right up here behind you.
Oh, sure. So, following up from the correspondence I sent earlier this week,
Right.
Soul Harvest Energy doesn't oppose Bill 1524 either, but they do have concerns about Amendment Number 1. And just as to recap, Soul Harvest began designing a project last fall, submitted a complete application to the county in January that was in compliance with all then applicable rules. Went through the, and at that time, I should say, there was no moratorium in place, and to our knowledge, none contemplated. Went through the process, got a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission, got approval from the Board of Appeals for the special exception, but we weren't able to continue on to the next step in the county's review process, the site plan review, because of the moratorium. And so we've patiently waited, we participated in the Planning Commission discussions, we're satisfied with what came to be Bill 1524, but then when Amendment 1 came into being, if enacted, that would essentially pull the rug out from under Soul Harvest Energy, because we would not be able to proceed with the development of this project. And we think that's incredibly unfair. And so for that perspective, we just ask the council, if you're going to adopt Amendment Number 1, to please consider an exception for projects that already have an approval, a special exception approval. And we had proposed the April date that the moratorium went into place, because our project had special exception approval at that time. So we proposed that language. We hope you'll consider it. Alternatively, we did propose an exception for projects in the VM zone, the idea being that VM zone permits a host of commercial, institutional, and relatively dense residential use. And so it makes sense to us that you would allow solar in that area and not prohibit it based on soil conditions when none of those other uses have a similar prohibition. And so we just ask for the council to consider one of those two options. Certainly, we don't oppose Amendment Number 1 going back through the process, and we would participate in that, but we would just hope that the moratorium wouldn't be extended, that we would be able to pursue our project approvals, at this time. John?
Okay.
All right, great. John Forgash, Soul Harvest Energy, and just to build off of what Zach said, in terms of Bill 1524, I think there were during that process of discussion and during the working group, there was a lot of conversation just about trying to make this a win-win for all involved. We spent 5 months in drafting that bill, which I think does a lot. As mentioned earlier, it really is going to limit any topsoil from being removed from the properties, which was a real concern. It's going to also ensure that all the facilities are removed, all of them specifically. We've already touched on the mouth payments that will be created for additional preservation of parcels. You know, we're requesting some fairness moving forward, and again, are in support of Bill 1524 with potentially some of the conditions that Zach just mentioned. Appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before they run away.
Yep.
We have small, medium, and large-scale solar. Your project is a large-scale solar?
That
It
is
is.
correct. The county defines large as anything over, that generates 2 megawatts or more and/or is situated on 10 or more acres of land. And so John's project is designed to generate 2 megawatts of power on 18 acres of land. So it does fall just above that.
How many solar panels would that look like? I'm just trying to get a visual in my head to generate 2 megawatts, I guess.
Well, again, it's going to take up about 15 acres of modules. I could do the calculation for you.
No,
real
no, I
quick.
mean, so basically it's the whole parcel would be,
About within the fenced area, it's about going to be a little bit more than half. That would be covered by the panels.
and what's currently on that land now?
Currently, it's a farm, so
Actively farmed?
actively farming, yes. So we'll be using about 30% of that property for solar, and the rest of the 70% of the property that wouldn't be under solar or would not be fenced would continue to be farmed by the farmer and utilize the current irrigation system that's out there.
Okay.
So, and that's, you know, in terms of community solar, which just does fall into this large-scale solar definition, you know, we view that as a benefit. I think, as was mentioned earlier, we're trying to co-locate the solar and potentially agricultural to allow those two to coexist on the same parcel.
Right. So typically, you're not going to have something too far away from a major power line to get the power where it goes. So you're pretty close to something like that in order to hook up, so to speak, as we're talking about hooking up to sewer lines to hook up and move that generated power.
Well, yeah, so our projects connected to the distribution grid are able to just incorporate a simple line tap from the existing three-phase power that runs along Cordova Road. And I guess it differentiates from the larger scale projects, which would require a substation to tap into a transmission line.
Okay.
So, you know,
Thank you.
trying
Just
to
more
use-
for informational purposes for me. I
Yeah,
appreciate
just trying to
you.
utilize the existing infrastructure that's there.
We
Thank
certainly
you.
think community solar is distinguishable from utility scale, but it's not distinguished in your code. So we all lumped into the same category.
Mhm.
Thank you.
A question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I know it's a public hearing, I do apologize for my question, but the topsoil removal was a concern of mine. 15 acres, I'm not understanding why this language is in here to begin with regarding it have to remain on site. How do you mitigate for 15 acres of topsoil?
There won't be any topsoil removal, material removal. There may be some that needs to be removed for an access road or something of that nature. But in terms of actually removing the topsoil from the site to allow for the construction of the project, it's not something that, our project would do or is really industry standard. So I think there may have been a few articles or discussions about where that has been seen in the past, or landowners potentially trying to, to go down that road if they were to put a solar project on a property. But again, in our case, it's not something that we would plan for in our design, nor does the industry do that on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Thomas, the moratorium is still in place pending the council's decision on this resolution. Is that correct?
I believe it was adopted in April. Is that correct? I think it was adopted April 12th and was for 5 months.
April 12th, so we're talking about November.
Wait, so we're done? May, June, July,
April.
August, September.
Yeah.
So the moratorium's over?
So the moratorium is
The
over.
moratorium was in place to allow the development of the bill, which became Bill 1524.
Right, but it's now past September 12th, so therefore technically the moratorium is over.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gerard?
Yeah, it's, see it?
Do I need to click that?
Right here, sorry.
Could you state your name and position, if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. Alan
Okay.
Gerard,
Yeah.
Easton Short Director with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, located in here at Easton on Washington Street. Here in support of Amendment 1 to Bill 1524. I can tell you our support didn't come easily. This was something that we looked at closely to see if this strikes the balance that I think members of the community are testifying on and that you all are seeking here. You have two public goods. One is the supply of clean renewable energy. Maryland has ambitious goals for meeting standards for clean renewable energy around the state. And we also want working farmland to supply food and fiber for consumers, and also to make sure that we have preferable land uses on the landscape. The Bay Foundation believes that well-managed farms that help prevent nutrients and sediments that run off the landscape and arrive in the Chesapeake Bay is a preferred land use when development is the alternative. So two competing public goods. You all are about balance. Where is the balance in a proposal like this? And so we try to do some analysis of the impacts of this amendment, and I just want to run through a couple slides and show you some of what we found. The resolution is here. I think this is in your packets, by the way. You can check out the hyperlink on the top to look at this interactive map anytime that you would like. We just did some screenshots of the map and put them in this PowerPoint presentation. This just shows you the publicly accessible data that we use to run some calculations, again, on what the effects of Amendment 1 would be on Bill 1524. Essentially using some GIS tools, I just want to draw you to a couple of areas here on this map. Number one, the lower left-hand quarter shows the number of agricultural acres in the county, about 125,000 acres. Second thing I want to draw your attention to is the dashed sort of black lines that run through the map here. Those are the existing transmission lines here in the county, and I guess outside the county as well. And then over on the right, you can see the color-coded scores. This is the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation scoring system that you heard reference to. How do parcels in the county rank in terms of their score? How many parcels are above 240, which would be prohibited from large-scale solar development under this amendment, and how many are below? And that was just a question we had, and we thought it would be good for council to just get a visual of that, and the public here as well. Important to know just the types of elements that go into the score. Maximum of 400 points, again, under existing county policy with preserving agricultural land. This is the scoring system that is already used for land preservation decisions in the county. Soil capability, soil productivity, you can see the list here and the scores that are assigned to each. I just want to draw your attention to stewardship practices here under Amendment 1 that does get a 0. Which practices are we talking about? These are actually management practices on the farm. Cover crops, stabilization, grass waterways, really best management practices that farmers use to protect water quality, steward their natural resources. We didn't, since there's up to 100 points that you can get for that under the existing ag preservation program, we didn't think it made sense for a landowner or farmer to remove those best practices from the farm in order to get to a lower score to make it eligible for large-scale solar development. So the amendment does remove those 100 points from the score. So instead of you get a total of 500, you only get a total of 400 for the various attributes that you saw in the previous slide. So what does that look like here? You can, again, if you do the interactive map at home, take a look at this further. You can see the little red circle. If you click on that, you can see a page pulls up, and there's a couple attributes you can fill in. We did minimum farm size to see if that was one of the factors that you would want to include in this policy. We didn't really do anything with that. I'm going to get a couple more minutes, thank you. But in the next box there, you can enter in a score from anywhere from 0 to 400 and see what that does. Let me see if I can just go back here. Previous, thank you. So you can see the difference here. I just wanted to run through that again. So we enter in 240. You can see on the map that where the parcels are that would fall 240 or lower, and the number of parcels in the county. So you remember we were around 125,000 acres countywide of agricultural land. That's from the tax map data. 240 and below, which gets you down to 65,000 acres. So really more than half of the county's agricultural land would still be eligible to be developed with large-scale solar under this amendment. Another attribute in this feature, and you can play with this a little bit, what happens with conserved lands? Some parcels are under conservation easements or other easement or deed restrictions that would limit certain activities. Presumably solar activity might be one of those. So if you knock out preserved parcels from the remaining 65,000 acres here, you end up down with 58,000. So, about 7,000 acres of that remaining those remaining parcels that score 240 or lower are still allowable for solar development in the county. So just wanted to run through with you a scenario and demonstrate that the number is not arbitrary, at least from our reading of the amendment. Again, just trying to understand what would be the impacts of the county. Is solar prohibited with this Amendment 1 being included? No, there are still a significant number of acres that would be available to develop large-scale solar while meeting the county's priority for making sure that we preserve our prime agriculture farmland. This is in the comprehensive plan. This is something that this county council and others have said is a priority. We value and want to protect our agricultural land. And our view is that this amendment does strike that balance. Yes, there is still agricultural land that would be eligible to develop solar. Yes, there is still agricultural land that would be considered prime and would be off limits to large-scale development.
Thank you. Okay, over here to my right, does anybody else like to talk about 1524? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and keep that open.
I've got a general question.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Hi, thank you. It's Carol Bean. I'm representing Eastern Shore Land Conservancy. And I just wanted to echo our support also for the bill and for the amendment as well. I think the amendment, in our view, helps to sort of rectify one of the things that isn't very clear in the initial bill. And then when I look at some of the language that was used in the moratorium, the resolution establishing the moratorium, really one of the main concerns why the resolution for the moratorium was passed is the desire to protect the prime agricultural farmland. That was the concern, and why there's been this pause. And I think that everyone has sort of agreed here that sort of process has been. I think all the people that spoke here today really lauded what that process was like. But I do think the need for the amendment was to specify a mechanism to ensure that the prime farmland, which is the reason for establishing the moratorium in the first place, that there's an established mechanism, and I think one, importantly, that also has the potential to survive any kind of public service commission challenge. So this is not an arbitrary new system that's being created out of thin air to try to control where solar is being placed. It's an existing system, scoring system that the county uses, and I think that is a fair system to continue to apply that, especially since the bill also references MALPF. That language about the MALPF program is in in the bill. And so I think by extension, it just makes sense to continue to use the MALPF criteria to sort of further define where is the appropriate siting. And I think it accomplishes protecting the prime farmland. And I think you see from the maps there, it leaves a considerable, it's not overly restrictive, it leaves really a lot of farmland still available.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Hallett. So I applaud the county for trying to protect the farmland and our scenery from too much solar. But I have to add, after listening, that it's, the lady before said it's not overly restrictive. Well, it's not overly restrictive unless it's your farm or your property. So I have several hundred acres here that are near the power lines. I have a couple solar leases in my pocket, and I've been offered large industrial scale projects development that would take up 100 acres or more, and I turned them down because I care about the scenery and the farming here as a landowner. And the only project we would even consider is something real small, maybe like 10, 15 acres, and we would tuck it away where nobody can see it, and we probably plant some trees around it. I read through the bill and the amendment. The bill has a lot of things in it that we already negotiated with the developers, things like protecting the soil, decommissioning, important things like that. I also read through the amendment, and the whole point system, it doesn't really make sense to me. And I just got to say that me personally, I would never consider a large project that's 100 acres or more, just because my family or my ancestors were the first settlers here in the county, going back several centuries. I care about the land, about the community. I would never want to do that. But I can't say the same for everybody else, and my concern is that if we take away the ability of somebody like myself to just do maybe under 5% of the available land for a small community solar project, then the only option that the larger landowners here have is to go through the Public Service Commission project and just do a big 100-acre or more project, which a lot of people don't want. If you look at that map that was up there, it's just by the power lines, so you can only really do a project near the power lines. And the last final point I would make is I'm a graduate student at Johns Hopkins in the Global Security Studies program, and a long-term trend that we're studying is energy security, and it's a major national security issue. I personally believe that within several decades, it would be in our long-term strategic interest to have our own energy production capability here on the eastern shore of Maryland. That's all I got.
I apologize. A point of procedure. I could, rattle off Alan Gerard's statement because he always comes up often. The same thing with Zach Smith. We know who everybody is. We asked for your name and where you're from, so
sure
that we can follow up and know who you are.
Yes, sir. Andy Hallett. Hallett, yes, sir, in Talbot County.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Brown.
No, you, right before you came up, I was basically going to offer some very similar type comments. So, I asked Mr. Behrens, and you can go back to your seat. It's not any direct question to you, but thank you. Because you said some of the things that I was going to ask in my general question. And I asked how many acres, and Mr. Behrens said, 15 of the 18 on that parcel, but it's still part of a larger farm that is still working. And then another gentleman, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, was speaking on behalf of his father-in-law and saying that the scoring system would preclude anything from going on the property. And I am all for preserving our best farmland. But again, I like to talk about compromise. And when you said, you know, a certain percentage, we do that all the time. I think our next public hearing is about changing something to, you know, another 15% larger, 30% larger. We do that kind of thing all the time. So rather than always allowing it 100% or disallowing it 100%, you know, I appreciate what you just said about you personally, your family wouldn't take 200 acres and put the whole thing in solar. But not everybody would do that. But having some ability to do a small section, tuck it away, as you referenced, makes sense to me. And so I see Mr. Council, our chairman of our planning commission, out there. And you can, it is a question for you. I am going to put you on the hot seat. Well, we haven't heard from him anyway. So it's a pretty simple question. Did you, because you helped with this, and we really appreciate you bringing this idea forward to help the MALP program and the funding and all of that. So very, very appreciative. Did you ever talk about?
Ms. Price, excuse me. Can you?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sure.
we wanna-
Chip Council, I'm a farmer in the county, but also serve as chairman of the Talbot County Planning Commission.
And we still are in the public hearing, so just to make sure we understand that.
Okay, I apologize if I'm out of turn, but it just, it really fits with the narrative of what just happened with the last couple speakers. Did you consider something like that? And when we're talking about the scoring and with Amendment 1, and I know maybe you weren't involved in drafting Amendment 1, so Mr. Gerard might be able to answer that, of having a certain percentage, if you have a farm of X size, you know, saying, okay, you can do 10% in solar, you're still preserving the vast majority. Was that any part, when we're talking about this moratorium and all of that, was any of that discussed?
So I would back up and say the Planning Commission was actively involved in the bill along with the solar developers. We had a workshop somewhere along the way with the council. I think three of you were there. As a result of that workshop, I think there was some interest in preserving prime farmland, and if there was a way to do that, that would hold up to the Public Service Commission. The Planning Commission was not involved in that. By the time that Mr. Lesher's amendment came to light, so to speak, the Planning Commission had already made our recommendation and passed it up. So the Planning Commission has not looked at Amendment 1. Personally, I guess what I would say is, you know, we heard, the Planning Commission heard all along. I think at every step of the way we heard the need and the concern of preserving prime farmland. But again, with what has been put on us by the Public Service Commission, we said, well, there's nothing we can do. We have an acreage cap. They've told us they don't have to uphold. How can we do it? Quite honestly, we didn't have an answer. I think, you know, Alan Gerard came up with something. He asked me to look at it. I looked at it. You know, I think that strikes a good balance. You're still almost half the farmland in the county that would be available to solar. Obviously, there are certain places that it could go, certain places that it couldn't go. I guess my concern is if you start to compromise, where does that hold you with the Public Service Commission on the rest of it? You know, obviously, Mr. Forgash, he and I have talked several times. Mr. Burns' son-in-law came to my house. I understand, you know, what we're trying to do, the problems, so forth and so on. I worry about every farmer that I know that gets 2 or 3 letters from a solar developer a week, me included. You know, we hear that there is interest from solar developers all up and down the Route 50 corridor, all up down the 309 corridor. You know, I know of at least a half a dozen farmers that have entered some type of agreement to allow the solar developers to move forward in the exploratory stage. So I guess my question to you is, do you want to get ahead of it, or do we want to look back and say, boy, I wish we'd seen it coming?
Well, it's interesting though that you said, where does it start to compromise with the Public Service Commission? But however, if we're telling half the people, half the farmers, that they can't put any solar in there because they scored higher than 240, then those people might just go straight to the PSC and get that overturned. But if we allow for a certain amount, it might actually work to our benefit. So we don't really know with the PSC what will work to our benefit. But if we say we're disallowing half the acreage outright, maybe they're not going to pay any attention to what we're doing. But if we allow a certain percentage on that, so I'm just saying maybe we need to consider that, and maybe this needs to go back to the Planning Commission for an amendment review.
That's why you guys get to make the tough decisions. My answer to that, in talking with other counties in Maryland, they knew Talbot was up to something. They knew the Planning Commission. They heard through the grapevine. I had 4 counties contact me. Now, this is at the Planning Commission level, and say, hey, what's up? What are you guys doing? And I told them what we were doing. I think you will see something like that in other areas of the state. Again, their concern is protecting prime farmland. Every one of those county, either presidents of their commissions or planning commissions, said they have been struck down by the Public Service Commission because they didn't have adequate area for the projects to go. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm not a utility judge, whatever, but the information that the Planning Commission received is if there is adequate area in the county, if they can go somewhere, the Public Service Commission has to take a harder look at it.
Right. Well, my concern would be that we're taking away the ability to have any solar, even a small piece in the tucked in the back.
I don't think we are. So anything
for
under,
anything over 240.
Anything under 10 acres can go. That's a medium-sized system. So the gentleman, testified that he might want a 10-acre project. 9.999 moves through as a medium scale.
So you can isolate just under 10 acres. If you own 100 acres, you could do 9.99 acres in solar.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. So in other words, in 2016, I think Talbot County was groundbreaking in our solar legislation. That was one of the things that came out above that when the Planning Commission looked at all the existing ordinance for solar systems. There were several things that were decided not to change. That size was one of them. So, unfortunately, as you know, with zoning, there has to be a number.
There has to be a number, but you can also do a percent. So you could say if it's more than 100 acres, you could do 5, or if you had 200 acres, you could do 5% or 10%.
So
I guess figure that out.
Yep. That's your guys' decision. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Counsel.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Come on up.
Again, thank you. This is John Forgash, Soul Harvest Energy again. Just in response to the map right there, while the map does show all properties that are scored at 240 or more,
yes,
it does not show which properties would be available for a solar development based on connection to the interconnection grid or adjacent to a distribution line. So there may be 70 or 80,000 acres that don't meet the 240 criteria, but again, we have no idea exactly how many properties or how many acres would be considered viable based upon just, eliminating those 240.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of the community solar projects that would participate in that type of program and under net metering law, that law right now caps a project at approximately 2 megawatts. And based on the acreage needed for the optimal system, right now you're talking about 15 to 20 acres in order to develop a project of about 2 megawatts. So there's, as Zach mentioned, there's a little bit of disconnect right now in terms of where community solar fits into the definitions for medium and large. And so we're kind of right at the cusp there. We're right at the 2 megawatt limit that's also identified in the code. So, we're kind of trying to walk a fine line here, but as it currently stands, gets lumped into the large scale definition.
Okay.
Mr. Forgas, did you say you were for or against the amendment?
We're against the amendment number 1, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Showalters?
So I hadn't seen these maps, obviously, before.
you-
I'm sorry, Ryan Showalter for the record, 100 Northwest Street, Easton. I had not seen the maps before the meeting.
Sure.
And I'm not necessarily opposed to Amendment 1. I just think it requires significantly more thought. And Ms. Price's comments or questions about the Public Service Commission and preemption, I think are appropriate. Mr. Council made the point that if you're 9.99 acres, you could get that project built today, whether you adopt Amendment 1 or not. But it's important to understand that the Public Service Commission only has authority for those projects over 2 megawatts. So generally, anything that's 10 acres or less isn't subject to Public Service Commission review anyway. I think another thing that's important to understand is that in addition to the point that Mr. Forgash made, proximity to transmission lines with capacity is essential. So if you can't be within close proximity to the transmission line, it's not cost effective to develop solar, either community solar or large scale solar. And that's a key consideration for the Public Service Commission. Another landscape consideration that occurred to me as you look at this map is most of the parcels identified as being available for solar are in the critical area. And, I'm not going to express an opinion on that today, but I'll just note that I'm not sure that's consistent with the county's policies or preferences. If you look at most of the parcels available for solar, they're out in the NEC districts, almost all of which is in the critical area or close to the critical area, and out on the ends of spurs, not on the main transmission lines that have the most capacity. So my only suggestion is I think you should adopt the bill as it was recommended by the Planning Commission. And if further review and discussion for some threshold is appropriate, it should get additional study and be more thoughtfully considered before it's just adopted. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Showalter. Okay.
Does this bill expire?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
It will expire on October 13th.
That means we have 2 more.
That leaves us for the next meeting at least.
Yeah.
Anybody else on this side would like to come up? Okay, so really appreciate the great conversation and trying to help move forward on this and do the right thing. So I'm going to keep that open.
So if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Pack.
Just for the record again, Mr. Thomas, I just want to reiterate that the moratorium that was set back in April has now elapsed. So those projects that were being held up due to the moratorium can now proceed underneath its current status. Is that correct?
The version I'm looking at indicates it would have been adopted on April 12th. I don't know if Ms. Moran can confirm.
I can't right now.
That would, if it was passed on April 12th, if the resolution was adopted on April 12th, then yes, it would have expired.
Okay. Just want to make sure we get that straight for the public. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in between the expiration of that and us adopting this? If something gets approved, it wouldn't fall under these rules that we may or may not pass.
I don't know that there are any that would be approved in that window. I don't know if there's any pending.
Well,
I don't know if Brennan might be able to comment on
Other than the
that.
first gentleman who
Where's
testified?
the solar, is it Soul Harvest?
Hey,
Yeah.
Brendan, can you come up for 1 second, please? Because I know the one gentleman's got he had to stop in midstream, and we need to know at midstream, was he at the end of his process, or was he at the where he was with that process? If you could help us.
Yeah, certainly. As Zach Smith and Mr. Forgash alluded to.
We're still in that public hearing, sorry. Yeah.
Brendan Tarleton, Acting Director for Planning and Zoning. As Zach Smith and John Forgash alluded to, they did receive special exception approval, a recommendation of special exception approval from the Planning Commission. Their special exception approval from the Board of Appeals They're now set to move forward with what would essentially be our site plan review process, which does require several meetings outlined within the zoning code, which would include a technical advisory review committee meeting and a public hearing for a major site plan in front of the Planning Commission for review and approval. In that time frame for scheduling, based on when this bill is set to expire, they would not be able to be scheduled for that meeting, as well as go before the Planning Commission for a possible approval for the project prior to October 13th, based on our review and submittal deadlines that we currently have.
So you're saying is that until this bill is resolved, those projects that are in the pipeline would still have to wait?
Well, it's not, it's going to have to wait. I don't think it fits the time
Well, not
frame.
that it would have to wait, but
Yeah, it's the
I'm just
time
saying,
frame.
if you were to
Yep.
move forward with a bill as proposed and it was to be voted on at a later time, I don't think the project would move forward under the current code requirements. So if you were to vote to enact the bill, they would be moving forward through our review process, but until they receive that approval, they haven't been vetted through that system. So if that language was enacted, they would still go through the new language as adopted by you all if it was adopted.
So how much longer does the process take for the one that's in the pipeline right now? Another couple months? Longer?
Likely a couple months would be an expedited timeframe, I would
Okay.
say, given that they would need to go to a TAC meeting, they would need to go to a planning commission hearing, and that usually takes between 2 and 3 months of scheduling and actual review time as well.
And just to clarify, the resolution establishing the moratorium was adopted on April 26th, so it is still in effect.
Just till the end of the month, though.
Yes, sir. Are we done with Brendan?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just to be clear, we haven't moved forward with.
We're in the
sorry.
public hearing, sorry. Just.
Sorry, John Forgash, Soul Harvest Energy.
Yep.
Just for the record, we have not moved forward with any additional development efforts after receiving our special exception permit. Our priority was to work with the county and through the moratorium to help, define what the new bill and new regulations were going to look like. So I think we're still pretty far away from being able to submit anything site plan wise to the county for a proposed project at this point in time. We still have a lot of engineering work and other development that we need to accomplish before we're at that point.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, since the moratorium is still in place, I mean, it's kind of, my comments kind of move.
We've just chosen not to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. One more.
Mr. President, Alan Gerard, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I heard 3 issues that I thought were good ones: proximity to transmission lines, the critical area overlay issue, and then Ms. Price was bringing up a potential carve-out at some percentage that might be appropriate for larger parcels. Those are issues that I would be willing to work with stakeholders to try and resolve. Mr. Forgash, Mr. Showalter, others that have experience in this area, be happy to work with them and see if we can come up with a revised amendment where something is appropriate. Now, I don't know how that fits with the timing of the 6-month expiration and the urgency to get 1524 through.
Right.
I'll leave that to you to navigate. There are 70% of these of the land that's expected to be under solar will be on the eastern shore as a result of interest in solar development. So as Chairman Council said, solar is coming. It is important to get this right. There's interest in the room on all sides to find that compromise and that balance and work through a solution that the county will accept. So we'd urge you to try and allow us in the community to work with you to get something workable here for council.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Did you want to say something?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. Okay. All right. And anybody else? All right. Okay. So I really like Alan was saying, Mr. Gerard was saying, we're all here to try to balance this all out and work together on this, and it really sounds like we can get there. So I
appreciate everybody's input on this and patience, and hopefully this council can get it done for you, and everybody can be satisfied with what we come up with. Okay, so let's move on. Madam Secretary, can you kind of get me straight? I think we're on Bill 1525, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Bill number 1525, a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development regarding the expansion of structures utilized for non-conforming uses subject to certain conditions.
Okay, thank you. All right, he's coming up. All right, great.
Yeah, I can get it.
Yeah.
That's all we only need two. Yeah. There we go, wait. I'm scared Frank's gonna say something wrong. We're off. There we go. Wait. everybody roll here. We're still we got public hearing here, so let's try to wrap this stuff up. Okay, so we're on 1525. Okay, you guys are at the table.
Yep. Council Bryce Yelton, Planner 2.
Okay.
This bill is to amend Chapter 190 to the Talbot County Code. It relates to the non-conforming uses section that we had previously talked about with the RC district and golf courses and country clubs. This amendment would allow for the expansion of structures utilized for non-conforming uses, subject to certain conditions. Currently, in our non-conforming uses section, the expansion of structures utilized for those non-conforming uses are limited to no more than the greater of 20%, or currently it's limited to 20% of the gross floor area of the non-conforming use. This bill would allow for that to be either the greater of that 20% of the gross floor area of the non-conforming use, or 3,000 square feet, and also no larger than 100% of what you have currently existing. This would allow businesses that are currently non-conforming uses to expand to greater heights than 20% of their gross floor area. It would allow for greater flexibility in that, and it would still be subject to minor site plan approval. And at that 3,000 square foot threshold, which is the maximum allowed, it would need major site plan approval as well. Thank you.
Okay. Brendan, you got anything to add, or good?
No, I think as we mentioned in the first time this was presented to you, the Planning Commission did provide a favorable recommendation of the amended language that you see here. Originally, it did not include the addition of the exceeding of the 100%, I think, which was an original concern of the council, of that threshold for that 3,000 square feet. And where that came from, the applicant chose to use that revision and amendment to address that. The Planning Commission also thought that that was a good amendment and a good suggestion, and that's what they've forwarded here for you to review.
Okay, great.
Real quick,
Okay,
so just to
yep.
make sure I got the math right. So if you had a 3,000 square foot building, you could go up to 6.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So, is there a limit? Is there a minimum lot size or anything like that for that?
There's not a minimum lot size, but typically additional site constraints for properties that would be limited by those expansions would also be further encumbered by building restriction lines and many other times also lot coverage requirements as well.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? Okay, so let's go ahead and thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for 1525. Over here to my right, if anybody wants to come up and speak with 1525. Okay, I'm going to go over here to my right. Anybody would like to come up? Yeah, come on up, Zach.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
For the record, Zach Smith, 114 Bay Street here in Easton, with Jerry and Susan Davis. Please recall, we were before the council back in June. We had proposed this text amendment. We were before the council back in June asking for your support for introduction. Please recall that Jerry and his wife have a commercial storage building in the village of McDaniel. It's on Maryland 33. It was built in the 90s, conformed at that time to the zoning for the VC zone. In 2018, when the county reclassified the village zoning, McDaniel became zoned VH, and storage uses, commercial storage was no longer permitted. And a consequence of that, when Jerry came in to propose a relatively small expansion of his building, he found that the use was no longer permitted, and therefore he could not propose an expansion of more than 20%. 20% can make sense, I think, in certain circumstances, but for a relatively small building like Jerry's, which is only 3,000 square feet, a 20% expansion was economically infeasible for him to move forward with. So because of that issue, we proposed to the council you adopt this bill that would allow for the greater of 20% or 3,000 square feet, which would allow relatively small buildings that have non-conforming use within them to propose through the special exception process and subject to the Board of Appeals review and approval reasonable and appropriate expansions. And when we were before you back in June, Ms. Price raised the issue of, well, what if you had a 500 square foot building? This would allow it to have many multiples of size. And so we understood that concern, and we proposed to the Planning Commission this additional language that caps the expansion at no more than 100% of the existing The planning commission supported that additional text, and that is, as Bryce said, what they forwarded their favorable recommendation to the council. So we would ask that you approve this bill, which would allow Jerry and Susan to propose a second building on their site up to 3,000 square feet through that special exception process. And I just wanted to note that that special exception process is an important safeguard, and it's a very public process. It involves notice to the neighbors and puts burdens on applicants to prove certain findings, like there won't be significant adverse impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. So we think that safeguard is important, and we would certainly be subject to that with any proposal that we have.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Davis?
and just basically to reiterate what Zach is saying is that I felt that the way that it's set up now, there really is no appeal process. You know, it's just that number and that's it. Whereas other issues in the zoning, you do have the appeal process. So basically, you're not giving a carte blanche that anybody could build a larger building.
Right.
It's that now I still have, you know, we still have to go through another hoop because, okay, you approve the bill, we'll still have to go to the appeal process, and the appeal board has to take a look at all the circumstances that are currently around it. And like Zach is saying, the original building was built in 1963. It was an oyster house, and it was turned into a storage facility in 1994. So it's been in the community and things like this. So these are things that we feel that we can go to the appeals board and basically plead our case, whereas currently right now we cannot do that.
Yes, sir.
So that's all we're asking for.
Okay. Okay, sounds great. Anything from council? Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Appreciate your patience tonight, too. I know it's been a long night, so.
Well, how do you think Mr. LaCates feels
I
over
know
there,
it,
just
I
sitting
know
there
it.
waiting for his presentation?
Yeah, I know. He's on call 24/7 anyway, you know.
Let him go
He's
home
on,
for
he's
2
on
hours
call.
and then
He's
come
on
back.
call. He can sleep more, you know. Okay, all right. Anybody else would like to talk about 1525? Okay, so we'll go ahead and keep that open for, and Madam Secretary, are we saying we're keeping it open? So that means anybody that can email and whatever up to a certain date, right? Okay.
Do you want to pick a date?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't know if we needed to or
We
not.
close it on the 23rd, and then the 27th will be the next county council meeting. Would that work?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Though I would say we might want to completely leave the solar bill 1524 open in case anything extra gets proposed, or we ask anybody to work on that bill, because I think that's gotten the most discussion. So I
Fine.
wouldn't want to close that before we come back again, and Mr. Lesher's here, since that Amendment 1 is his amendment.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Because we have 2 more meetings before we have to vote on that one.
So keep solar open till let's go.
Well, let's just
Well,
not,
so- well,
let's make a decision in 2 weeks, the next meeting.
Well,
Okay.
not
Right?
only that, am I right by saying it's got to go to the planning commission too, before it comes back to us for recommendation?
Have to.
It may, depending on what amendments, if any.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
But that would have to be done at the next, if any amendments were made that required referral to the planning commission, that would have to be done at the next meeting, because the planning commission only has one more meeting,
Yeah, that's what I was kind of
During
getting
this
at.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think it'll be enough time.
October, and then it would have.
It would have to go to the planning commission tonight, right, Brennan? Anything that the council wanted to go to the planning commission would have to be referred tonight, right, for the October planning commission meeting?
That's correct.
So if you want something to go to the planning commission for its October meeting, you would have to
Well,
refer it tonight.
I would ask, if I may, Mr. Callahan, that resolution 334 go to the planning commission and the public works advisory board. Also, the amendment to bill 15, let me get my straight here.
24?
24, thank you. The amendment to bill 1524 also go them. They have not reviewed that one yet. And one more I had here. I think that was it.
Is that it?
Those two.
So
Okay, so we got,
so I have an amendment formulating in my head, but I don't have exact verbiage, so I'm not sure how we do this. But you heard me refer to perhaps a percentage of a larger property. I mean, we're like right now we're talking about this, the greater of 3,000 square feet or 20%. So we do this kind of stuff all the time. I don't know what the right percentage is, but pretend you've got a 200-acre parcel, right? So we just said 9.99 acres is okay because that's medium, I guess that's medium scale. But if you've got 200 acres, like one of the last guys who testified, to tuck away 15 acres in the back corner someplace where it's really not disturbing anything, to me, may be appropriate. And I honestly believe that that may actually strengthen our argument with the Planning Commission that we're not disallowing everything over to a score of 240. So somehow I'd like to refer some type of amendment like that. I don't know if we can come up with an amendment, a percentage, plug a number for now, and then the Planning Commission may be able to work out. If I said 10% tonight, maybe the right number is 5%, maybe it's 15%. But rather than a finite number, because 10 acres on a 50-acre parcel, it's pretty big. But 10 acres on a 200-acre parcel or a 500-acre parcel is not very much at all for that to make sense for that larger farm. So
Do we need a council decision on Mr. Second and motion for Mr. Pack for the request that you made to send those to the Planning Commission?
No,
well,
I'm
I'll second those.
I don't know what
need 'em?
procedure, you need a motion to send it to the planning commission. I mean, if we
Yeah,
need one, I
motion-
would
motion
certainly make the motion that both,
Yeah.
334
In the amendment.
and the amendment to
Okay.
1524 both go over to the planning commission for their review and the public works advisory board for their review.
Right. So I'll,
And be ready for us when they can get it back to us.
so I'll second that.
Okay, so Madam Secretary, we've got a motion to second it, to move 334 to Public Works and the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Can you call the vote, please? Oh, I'm sorry.
And 1524.
Did you say?
Amendment one.
You didn't say that.
Amendment 1.
He did.
Amendment 1. I think they've already heard 1524.
Yes.
Right, but Amendment 1.
Right, the Amendment 1, yep.
They both need to go. They both need to go, then I'll modify my amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Did you?
Brennan Tarleton again, Acting Planning Director. I just wanted to say, could you also include, did you mean to include 335 in there as well?
Maybe that was the one I forgot. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear before you
I-
made a
There is
motion,
no-
everyone voted on it, and we had to start all
was-
over
I know I
again,
had
so.
3 in my mind, but in
There is no
the longness of the
335.
night, probably forgot 335, so, and
Wait.
335.
Where is 335?
335
There
is
is no
just
335.
introduced.
Oh, it was just introduced?
You
I
just
apologize.
introduced 335.
Okay.
Yeah, right. 335 and 336.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So then
Sorry
what?
for the extra confusion.
So then,
No problem.
is there any way to try to verbalize as best I can what I'd like it to be, and then have Patrick draft something, and then the Planning Commission could look and see, and maybe with the help of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
You would need to introduce an amendment, get it seconded, and then
But first of all,
it would be discussed, and then you could request it to go through.
Right. So obviously the problem is timing and 3 weeks' notice for the Planning Commission, so that's why I'm trying to do it as best I can on the fly, because if I wait, then we won't be able to consider, I would
So
really
we're
like to
on
hear the.
1524, so you would want to offer Amendment 2 on Bill 1524 to set a percentage limitation of land
Mhm.
that could hold solar.
Right, so I would say maybe if you use 10%, so at 100 acres, you're already covered by the 10-acre rule. So on parcels greater than 100, you could do 10%. And then certainly the Planning Commission can see if that's appropriate, I think, and with the help of the other groups that have been able to provide information tonight, and like Alan Gerard doing that research, hopefully they could help with that. So that, I think that's probably the easiest way to propose it, that on parcels up to 100 acres, they're covered, that's 10%. Over 100 acres, I would say 10%, and then let's let people that are smarter than us see if that's the appropriate number, but at least we get a chance for the planning commission to have some discussion on something like that.
So what,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
go-
it would
go-
help to articulate exactly what the amendment would be and then introduce that, so
God, Frank did just a great, I think you just did a great
Yeah,
job
so
on the
let
amendment
me-
I want to introduce.
So, I mean, so.
So,
I'm pulling up the bill now.
So you
But
would,
this would be the second amendment to
Yes, this would be amendment
234.
number 2 to
Amendment
Bill
To
1524.
334.
Mhm.
Right, this would be the second amendment.
to,
so on parcels larger than 100 acres, 10% could be utilized in the large-scale solar. That's the most simple form of
would
it.
allow solar up to 10% or what?
Yeah, up to 10%, that'd be fine.
So would this be in lieu of the amendment that's that Pete, that Mr. Lesher proposed? Because it was an amendment to the location requirements that said that a parcel of agricultural land upon which the large-scale system is to be sited is based on the evaluation criteria, and if it exceeds 240, then it can't be sited on the property. So would this be?
Right, because you really
Right.
wouldn't need my,
Yeah.
you
So
wouldn't
would-
need
Go-
my
go-
amendment if his doesn't pass.
So D2A III would be,
Where are
Jess,
you reading
Jess,
from?
Jess, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I do think that this needs staff time to work out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is it possible for Mr. Thomas to work on this amendment, it be introduced by Ms. Price and any other council members on the 27th? Brendan, is there a provision in the planning commission bylaws for them to amend their agenda and add this as a discussion topic?
Yes, I believe we could do so, so long as sufficient public notice is provided for the actual meeting. I believe that the agenda
Right.
can be revised to include additional items.
Well, I think the problem they may run into is the time period on public
Right,
notice.
so that's why I think I need to get something on the record tonight.
Well, Mr. Price, if you don't have it in your mind, because of the lateness of the hour, we have 2 more presentations to go. We've been here
Okay,
quite
so I
long
didn't know this was
evening,
gonna
so
come up. I got a lot of
I-
information
I do
tonight.
understand that.
So
but-
I'm gonna propose the amendment as best I can,
Okay,
like
that's-
what I
that's
just
fine.
said.
Okay.
And hopefully, again, people smarter than us may tweak the
Okay.
numbers or the language a little bit. So on parcels larger than 100 acres, up to 10% could be utilized in large-scale solar. And you can make that sound a little prettier.
Okay,
Okay.
that's the amendment. Do we have a?
So that would be,
Second.
instead of Mr. Lesher's proposed amendment, correct?
Right, otherwise
So-
you wouldn't need it.
So this would be amendment number
I
2.
don't think you can do it instead of Mr. Lasser's
Yeah, you can
amendment. His
do it.
amendment still stands on his face, correct?
Yes.
So this would be her amendment, separate and apart
Correct.
from Mr.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is based on where it would go in the ordinance, so.
Oh, the order,
Right, because
okay.
what his proposed amendment does is it adds a new subsection B under D, the location requirements under D1. Because all it says right now is location, large-scale solar energy systems are prohibited in the RC zoning district. He makes that B an A and adds a B, so Mrs. Price's amendment would add a new B, which says what she just said.
So we're gonna let you, as the professional, work out the legalese on this thing tonight. Whatever she said, if we can get a second, it's good, it's golden. And then you tweak it in whatever way you see fit. And I will second the amendment. I don't know really what it says, but I'll second it so we can move it ahead. So,
Like, what it
and then
says, it adds a proposed D1B.
That's
A
fine.
and B, the B provides that on parcels larger than 100 acres, large-scale solar systems can only take up to 10%.
Okay, and you tweak it and bring it back to us for our review, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay.
that, Mr. Pack.
So, I don't need a motion, second or it's
I'll
not.
read
Second, second.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so
Just for clarity, would you
Yeah.
like Patrick to go draft that
I will
amendment? and
go
come
right
back
now,
to the
bring it
office?
right back.
Yep, that's fine.
And you move on with the agenda?
Yep, we can move on. Okay. All right, so, okay.
So, okay, Madam Secretary, we're doing the presentation of the FY23 Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation. Yes.
Ann Roan, I'm the Planner 3 with Talbot County Planning and Zoning. As you're familiar with this, and we met earlier today, that the state requires for the MALPF program that the county council, that it gets a recommendation from the county council, and that recommendation there's been a planning commission recommendation and the Ag Preservation Advisory Board recommendation, and that's what we're here to discuss, on which applications to send to the state for consideration for their easement program. This is an annual program. This year, this is its 42nd year, and this year we received 27 applications from different farms in the county, and the state is allowing us to recommend 14 of those, and they are in your packet as we discussed earlier today in closed session. So I'm seeking a recommendation from this council to forward these applications that are to the state.
Sounds good.
So moved.
So, and I'll second that, Ms. Collins. We have reviewed, as Ms. Rowan said, those parcels which we're not going to speak directly about are in the council's packet. Council has had a chance to review those 14 properties in acreage and location in the county. So I think it's appropriate that we move these 14 along, and I'll second Mr. DeVillio's motion.
Okay, Madam Secretary, we got a motion second to move these 14 properties to get approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Okay, there you
Thank
go.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Good job.
much.
Good job. Okay. Man, they're ready. They're ready. Look at them. They're ready. Look at them. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. All right, we got Talbot County's finest and the best. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're no problem. No problem.
We'll bring them up.
So we got the Talbot County Hazardous Mitigation and Community Resilient Plan that you're going.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Brian Lacates, Director of Talbot County Emergency Services, with me for this project. I have Geneva Schaffler, Emergency Management Coordinator. Thank you for your time. I will turn it over to Geneva because she is the shining star of this project and she deserves all the spotlight. I'm just here to support her.
That's great.
Good evening. So my name is Geneva Schaffel, the Emergency Management Coordinator for Talbot County Emergency Services. I did want to thank Dr. Maguire for shouting out National Preparedness Month. That is September, but today I am here to, one, keep it brief, and two, talk about mitigation. So we are coming to a close on our Hazard Mitigation and Resiliency Plan update. This plan, we use Smith Planning and Design to contract with this, our planning process. It has been a 2-year It's been a 2-year planning process. We started in late 2019, and we are now coming to a close, hopefully at the end of this month. So mitigation, the point of this plan is to essentially eliminate or reduce the risk of disasters that could happen here in Talbot County. We are unique here in Talbot that we address resiliency in this plan, so it is a requirement that we address the natural hazards, but we take it a step further to include that community resilience and the ability to bounce back after these disasters. This is just a quick blurb that for every $1 that you invest in mitigation, it is a $6 return of investment when it comes to disaster damage costs. And here is the meat of why I'm here. This is a FEMA required plan. It is required to be updated every 5 years. Within the requirements, it lays out the planning process, who needs to be a part of the planning process. And finally, we are required to have a approved plan in order to apply for federal funding. So a lot of our mitigation funds A lot of our mitigation funds need this plan to be approved in order for us to move forward to receive those funds. As it stands today, the plan is approved by FEMA. It is approved by the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. Yes, and it is also adopted by all 5 of our municipalities. I'm going to do a quick overview of the plan. Our community pillars are not new to this council. So our plan is based around these pillars. These pillars also allow us to integrate this plan with our other plans. Those pillars being health, safety, and welfare, economic stability, education, infrastructure, and the environment. With the planning process, we had a core planning team that was made up of myself, Public Works, Planning and Zoning, and the Health Department. We had a larger planning committee. From there, we did a reflection on our last plan. The bulk of this plan is data collection, historical data and present data, along with some future data. We had a very extensive public stakeholder surveys and outreach, some workshops, and then now we are in the draft form in the adoption phase of the planning process. A couple of the components are what I just explained. We included hazard identification and risk assessment. We profiled all of our towns, the county, and our critical infrastructure. And then we also assessed all of our vulnerabilities. The meat and purpose of this plan is the 3rd section, the mitigation strategies. Essentially, we have 30 strategies, low cost and no cost to more costly to address our mitigation, essentially strategies and risk to different natural hazards. And then it concludes with supporting documentation. Here I have identified our hazards. The ones highlighted in blue that you see are ones that were rated highly. These hazards were rated on a couple different things. One, data, what has currently occurred and what is in the past and now, and then also public survey. We were thankful to get almost 500 responses from county citizens. So what you're looking at here is things that affect our county frequently and also what our citizens are most concerned about. I'll highlight a couple, our coastal hazards and flooding, which is no surprise. This year, with our surveys, extreme heat was a concern. We also added some new hazards and threats to this plan from our previous plan, those being our threats, so our man-made hazards, emerging infectious diseases, active assailant, cybersecurity or cyber attacks, and complex coordinated terrorist attacks. Of those, emerging infectious diseases was rated high in our public survey. So the development of our action items to address these hazards, we conducted a status update from our previous projects, some completed, some tabled, some in the works. We collected some new ideas through workshops and surveys. We did a prioritization process of those projects. And then now we're hopefully going to move into the implementation phase of working on those projects. I'm going to go over just not all 30 of them. I'm just going to go over some themes of our action items. I listed a couple of them here. 12 of the 30 were rated high from our planning committee. Some of these projects, like I said, some are low cost, no cost, some are very costly, some are in conjunction with state partners, some here locally. I wanted to point out some of these aren't our traditional mitigation projects of just high dollar things of culvert mitigation and roadway updates. Some of them are things that we do on a daily basis, a lot of them being outreach and education, which I think really ties in the resiliency part of how our community can individually be prepared and lessen the effects of disasters. Just a couple of the overarching themes: planning efforts, outreach, assessing and inventorying our current capabilities, codes and standards, and then those mitigation activities to our critical infrastructure. This project website has been live for 18 months. This entire process has been well documented and available to the public. It is going to stay live so they can see the notes from our meetings, our workshops, our surveys, you name it, it is all out there. And that is all. I want to do a big thanks to a couple people, Jenny Smith and Eric Messick. They were with Smith Planning and Design. They were wonderful. And then to everyone that supported our process, because it was definitely a whole community 2-year-long process. That was the slowest presentation I've ever given also. I just want.
It was good. It was good. Mr. Pack, got anything for us?
Wonderful job, as always.
Thank you.
You know, whether you believe in global warming or not, I think all you have to do is look out your front door and you can see that things have certainly changed across the nation, across the world, you know, quite frankly. When you look at these long periods of just intense heat and drought in some areas of the country, followed by downpours of rain and mudslide, something is certainly happening, you know, and of course cause and effect is always with us. So, you know, having these type of plans in place to go to will assist us here in Talbot County in keeping people safe, because, you know, we're not immune from natural disaster. You know, floods can happen. We had an earthquake a couple of years ago, you know, that came through. So natural disasters and have to be mitigated for, have to be planned for. So I certainly appreciate all the time and effort that you guys put into this. Again, we can pray that we would never have to use it, but you know, that's just fruitful thinking. I think the reality is that somewhere, someday, we're going to have to pull this thing out and use it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Ms. Price?
No, agreed. Thank you for all the work. You know, we have all these long-range plans in all the departments, and they're all very important to have these documents in place. And people are like, oh gosh, why do you do all that? This is the one that we know we better have in place, because you're right, it will happen at some point. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comprehensive report, and I really appreciate all the input from all the different engaging partners that helped you with this and gave information. And it's always a nice time when Brian's in front of us, not asking us to buy like an ambulance or something.
That's next.
That's next.
A truck, an ambulance, a building.
Go ahead, Mr. Stant.
I just want to take a moment. I mean, I'm very proud of Geneva and Brian and the team down there, obviously. I think that the point I would like to make, and this was a highly inclusive process. They had a lot of input from the community, and it's never been so important. Of course, I love promoting the concept of comprehensive approach to mitigation, but this plan specifically in this time that we're in is really important. The federal government has opened the doors to grant money to the tune that we haven't seen before. And the way this money is going to reach down to touch communities is through plans like this. And fortunately, Talbot County has broadened our view from just a natural hazard mitigation plan to a comprehensive plan, which opens the door to all kinds of creative solutions to reduce risk in the areas of education, environment, public safety, health and welfare, and the others, economic stability. So it's timely, it was a good job, and certainly I'm proud of the work that they did. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would say the same thing, Geneva and Brian and your whole team. You know, you're always behind the scenes, but, you know, with the professionalism and the dedication of you guys is really off the charts. And I can't thank you enough for really protecting us, you know, because when something happens, you know, everybody runs to you guys. So, you know, you're going to be there for us. So really appreciate all the hard work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. What do we have to do, Madam Secretary? Do we have to?
Well, you have an administrative resolution
Okay.
to approve that
Okay.
enacts the plan, approves the plan.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
Want to read it? Let me read it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got to read it first. Okay,
Do you
there
want
we
me to
go.
read the whole thing or just the caption?
Just the capture's fine.
Administrative resolution adopting the 2022 Hazard Mitigation and Community Resilience Plan for Talbot County, Maryland.
Okay, sounds good.
And the plan is on the website for the public. I mean, for the sake of the time, if you
Right.
wish.
It is.
Just for the record, if you wish to go on, you can go on to talbothazardplan.org and review the plan. So we're not trying to do anything nefarious, underhanded. The public
Yep.
it can go on to www.talbothazardplan.org. And with that reading, Mr. Callahan, I make a motion that we accept the resolution.
Second?
I'm sorry, is that for introduction only?
Oh, wait.
No, this is action, it's an administrative resolution.
So it doesn't need to be introduced
Oh, you can
first?
introduce and then vote,
Okay,
yes.
so I'll wait for your instructions. Show of
Okay,
hands.
raise of hands.
Okay.
Yep.
And as it is administrative resolution, I would just say, Mr. Callahan, if we don't, we can move this forward to a vote tonight.
That sounds great.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, we got a motion second to move the plan forward.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay.
Your
Okay,
plan
good.
is approved.
We're good, we're good.
Thank you all for your
We're
time.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to stay here?
Okay. And-
Oh,
Huh?
yeah, okay.
More sewer.
Yep. So, I guess we've got, council consideration public works agreement. That's next. Between Preserves, Y Mills property, and the owner, association.
And
Mr.
Patrick
Clark?
stepped out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can try and help out here, Council. We have been working with the Office of Law as well as the Property Owners Association for the Preserve at Y Mills. This is actually an agreement to transfer the wastewater treatment system from the Preserve at Y Mills Homeowners Association to Talbot County. At that point, and upon your review, I guess, or consideration for approval of that, we will then begin the process of executing that and then working to go to closing. And then we'll, I guess within about 2 to 3 weeks, we would end up acquiring the wastewater treatment plant along with the spray irrigation fields.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Council?
I would just
Any
like to
discussion?
thank Mr. Clark and Mr. Thomas for working diligently with all parties involved to clean up this unfortunate situation that I am glad that we're taking over. I don't believe that neighborhood-run or HOA-run facilities like this work. We've had, I believe, 3 strikes and they're out. So I would be happy to see that be banned in Talbot County. But I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the Public Works Advisory Agreement.
Okay.
Public Works
I'll
Agreement.
second that motion, and I will add to Mr. DeVillio's statements that this Public Works Agreement is in line to, I think, the overarching plan that I know this council has, and hopefully future councils will share as well, that these small subdivisions, if they're built, those wastewater treatment facilities are run through the county, which has more expertise and manpower to keep them running and running up to code. We needed this agreement to be in place in order for us to get the funding from the state for any improvements. Mr. Thomas, who had to step out, has been in those negotiations. Mr. DeVillio is also set in those negotiations as well. So this is that next step, if you would, so that we can go ahead and get this agreement done, take possession of the property. Mr. Thomas is coming in now, and therefore we can go ahead and now apply for, with Mr. Clark's direction, apply for any state funding that could be possibly out there for any improvements to this facility. It's in dire need of repair, and it's probably going to have to be a tear down and rebuild, in my opinion, because of how the system is so antiquated and poorly maintained. But we need to have this in place for funding purposes. And with that, I'm going to stop as I see Mr. Thomas is now coming to the room.
He's working tonight hard.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the Public Works Agreement and Y Mills. Do you have anything, Mr. Thomas, that you would like to add?
No, I would just add, I mean, this is consistent. The council adopted Resolution 326 back in April. This to amend the comprehensive water and sewer plan to in part to acquire the Preserves wastewater treatment facility. That was approved by MDE and is part of the comprehensive water and sewer plan. This public works agreement is required under Chapter 152 of the code when the county acquires a wastewater treatment facility. So it's just consistent with what's required under the code and the amendment as previously adopted by council.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Price, you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Just one last question for Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, we did not need for this agreement to be witnessed or reviewed by Public Works Advisory Board, did we not?
No. We have, I think, presented the information, and they
Sure.
did, I think, when we did the resolution, they did review the resolution, which was to take over the facility.
Okay.
But we've not shared this agreement with the Public Works Advisory Board.
Okay.
Because it was more, in all
More
honesty,
administrative than.
It's more administrative
Okay.
and internal work. for our
That's
part.
fine.
Okay.
That's
Okay. All right, so we got a motion second on the floor to approve the Public Works Agreement as presented. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right.
Would you like to go forward with the amendment now?
Mr. Thomas
Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
gave the amendment.
We'll go ahead and do the amendment. Thank you.
So the amendment, this would be amendment number 2 to Bill 1524 for the purpose of amending section 190-32.4 solar energy systems, subsection D, large-scale solar energy systems, regarding the location to add, to make the language large-scale solar energy systems are prohibited in the RC zoning district, a subsection A, and adding a new subsection B that would read, large-scale solar energy systems proposed to be sited on a parcel of real property greater than 100 acres shall not occupy more than 10% of the parcel's acreage.
Okay.
Sounds pretty simple.
Mr. Collins, I would ask that, like the first amendment drafted by Mr. Lesher, that this amendment also be sent down to the Planning Commission and Public Works Advisory Board for review.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Did you introduce it?
All right.
I'm sorry.
So you want to go back?
I thought I introduced.
We did, but.
Well, now that you actually have it, look.
Okay, so, I'll introduce that
Okay, and
first.
I'll second it again, and I'll introduce it.
Or I guess, I'll just listen.
Introduced by Council Mr. Lesser. Did
Yep.
you all
Did you raise your
introduce?
hand too?
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
it's-
No,
shut one.
it's confusing.
Okay. Yeah. Yep, I'm good.
And we're gonna just send it down.
And then make a motion to send it.
Yeah, I make a motion that we send it down.
Second.
I got a motion second to send it to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pack.
Okay.
Vote. Have a motion, so you gotta vote. We just need a vote on the motion.
Oh,
Oh.
Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Place stamp, County Manager.
There you go.
After the night, are you sure?
Introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, so Brian Lacates, would you like to come up? Tonight it'd be Brian Lacates this evening under County Manager Report. He has 3 items.
Is a truck in one of them?
Here we go, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Brian, I'm going to go ahead and read the form here, and then we'll hand it to you, and you can add detail. So the first item, the Department of Emergency Services requesting to utilize FY23 budgeted funds to purchase a 2023 Horton ambulance with Ford F550 chassis from FESCO Emergency Sales, utilizing a HGAC, that's the Houston Galveston Area Council Cooperative Purchasing Agreement, in the sum of $298,560. There are sufficient funds in the FY23 budget for this purchase, and Mr. Lacates can add any detail.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back. So I would, before we get into that, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Matt Watkins. He is our new EMS chief. New as in 8 months ago, but I've never had the opportunity to bring him to council for a formal introduction. So Matt's been with us for a great deal of time, climbed through the ranks and hit the ground running in January of this year, and he's done phenomenal work so far. So I did want to bring Matt here because he is our EMS chief now. So
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Welcome. So he should ask for the ambulance.
So moved.
yeah, so the request is just for a new ambulance. This is going to be a replacement of an existing unit with 2011 with 100 40,000 miles on it currently. So by the time we get a replacement, it's going to have well over that. So.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we got a motion second to go ahead and purchase a new ambulance. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
The second request that Emergency Services has is to enter a contract for the development of an RFP for the 911 center's computer-aided dispatch system to replace that. Specifically, they want council approval for a contract with Mission Critical Partners for the development of this proposal in the sum of $137,430. Talbot County would be using the HGAC Cooperative Purchasing Agreement to procure services, and this company is currently assisting all 9 counties on the Eastern Shore with the migration to Next Generation 911. There are sufficient funds in the 2023 budget for this purchase. And again, we'll turn it over to Emergency Services for detail.
Thank you, sir. So this would be hiring a consultant to come in and look at our existing CAD system and then meet with stakeholders from law enforcement, EMS, fire, dispatchers, anybody that has anything to do with our CAD system to determine what would be the best thing for our future. The current CAD system does not meet all of our needs, and we would like to look into replacing that or adding to the existing one if possible. So this is a company that specializes in 911 centers and has a great deal of technical knowledge. The state of Maryland has contracted with Mission Critical Partners to do several studies in 911 centers across the state of Maryland. Eastern, as the county manager advised, that they have been contracted with the entire Eastern Shore, all 9 counties, to make the Next Generation 911 migration over to that system. So they have a great deal of knowledge about our 911 center, but about all of Maryland 911 centers already. So that's one of the reasons that we want to go with this company. The learning curve would be rather easy for them to come in and know exactly what we need and what's going to service our citizens the best. So,
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to go ahead and the 911 division computer aid stuff to get that going. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
And their final request is to enter a contract for services for increased reimbursement for transport of Medicaid patients. They're requesting council approval to procure services from Public Consulting Group to assist emergency services with data collection, submission to the state of Maryland's Emergency Service Transporter Supplemental Payment Program. There's got to be an acronym for that. This program will allow Talbot County to submit a request for supplemental funding for all transported patients insured by Medicaid. PCG, that company, will bill Talbot County 12% of received reimbursements. If approved, Talbot County would be joining with other counties to utilize an existing contract with Palm Beach County, Florida. Several Maryland counties are utilizing this PCG for this service, and Brian can give you more information on it.
So this is a program that was passed into legislation last year that allows emergency services or EMS services to bill Medicaid for it's retrospectively billing for calls that you've had in the last calendar year. Currently, Medicaid pays us $100 per transport. That hasn't been raised I don't think, in my entire time in EMS. So we get paid $100 whether we do an advanced level life support call, basic life support call, we get paid $100. So $100 doesn't necessarily pay all the bills when we come here and ask for a $300,000 ambulance. So that's not anything unique to Talbot County. So across the board, they have introduced legislation that passed last year that allows us to go back, and as long as we can demonstrate that we're not making a profit from our billings, which we are not, we can go back and bill Medicaid. So it's not the patient, so it's going to be billing the government for the extra the gap in there. So we're getting paid $100. We're on average about $700 and some per transport. So there's a $600 gap in there. We could go back and bill the patients, or not the patients, I'm sorry, bill the state for those patients on Medicaid and say, you owe us more money, kind of thing. And then they will give us a portion of it. They won't give us the entire amount, but they will give us a portion. So,
Brian, but we did get it raised this year.
It's not in effect yet, but yes,
Okay,
there is a
so-
raise coming.
So I would assume then, so once you get up to the $150, and right now it's just for transport, but you should have the same type program once the bill takes effect, which gets up to $150. We don't have to transport, we can treat on-site there.
That is, yes, that is
I
correct.
haven't had a chance to really see you since that all took place, so
Yes.
I hope you're very happy with that one, and that's that bill that also, if you just transport to an urgent care facility, because
Yes.
currently it was $100 and only to an ER. So
Yes.
this hopefully is going to beef up and provide additional revenues to
It
your
does.
EMS to help pay these bills. So
Yes, that bill was huge for us because it does allow us to do transports to alternate care facilities and get paid for them. So
Right.
we were not able to do that before. So that's huge. And then the increase in there for $50 still leaves that deficit, but it still starts to close that gap. So
right, but now won't you also be able to? So when you're not transporting, so is this just a 1-year thing, this 12%, or is that you think it's going to be every year?
the program we believe will continue. So it was introduced last year, and not all of Maryland counties participated in it. We did not. This year, it seems like a lot more counties are participating in that program. I think it's going to continue into the future, especially when we're talking about, you know, the billing has been raised to $150 or the receivables of $150. There's still a big gap in there. So I think the program is going to continue into the foreseeable future.
So is it just going to be the gap on the transports to or I mean, it's not just going to be transports to ER. Now, when you transport anywhere, you should be able to collect that gap.
Correct.
Will this program help if people are refusing transport or you're just treating on site in their home?
Currently, it does not, but it will in the future, yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. So that's an extra bonus that we didn't
Yes.
talk about at NACO when we introduced this bill.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. It makes my heart
Any
sing.
chance to recoup money.
Absolutely.
So I make a motion that we enter into an agreement with PCG to help collect data from the SMESTSPP.
Second.
You made the acronym.
There's that
Very good.
Yeah, there you go. Second that.
All right, we got a motion and a second to what Frank said with the contract. And Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVilleo?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing in closing, I will mention, you took the vote on it, but your estimated revenue for this year is going to be what?
Approximately $200,000.
And so, you know, we're buying a new ambulance this year that you just approved. Now, you did approve ARPA funds to do that, but, you know, this will bring in enough funds to help with the capital purchase in the future, so.
Undoubtedly, there'll be an ambulance next year, too.
So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. Good. Mr. Council President, this concludes your county manager report. Thank you.
Okay, good job.
Thank you all for
Thank
your
you,
time.
guys.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Matt. Okay.
Public comment, we have one name signed up.
Yep.
For Dave Stepp.
Come on up here, Dave Stepp. He got goodies for us, don't you?
I brought
Yeah, he
props
does.
today.
I got you.
Did you bring us candy?
Yeah.
It is not.
Jello shots.
Need some sugar.
Just a second to set up here, please.
Okay.
Thank you so much. All right. Again, Council, Dave Stepp, Easton. I'd like to thank you for your time today and service to our county, as usual. May I start off by proposing a fictitious offer to the council. In front of me, I have 4 drinks, one for each council member. I've approved these 4 drinks for human consumption for anyone over the age of 6 months. All of you certainly qualify for this offer. I'm not going to tell you everything that's in them, but you can trust me, they're safe. In exchange for consuming one of these 8-ounce drinks, you'll be rewarded with a $50 gift card to a local merchant. Pretty good deal, right? Now for what I hope to be a rhetorical question to the council. Would any one of you like to take me up on my offer? Mr. DeVilleo, Mr. Callahan, Ms. Price, Mr. Pack? No? Okay. Last call, just 8 ounces, $50 gift card? No? Okay. Wonder where this one's going, aren't you? All right. Well, I thank you for going through this fictitious scenario here today, and I can say I'm not surprised at any of your decisions. In fact, I'm pleased at your choice of discretion. I myself would certainly be suspect of this offer and would not take the bait, or should I say bribe. There's just one problem, though. This fictitious scenario actually played out in reality right here in Talbot County last year. You may or may not know that Talbot County Public Schools has partnered with local philanthropists Talbot County Economic Development, and the Midshore Community Foundation to offer $50 gift cards to students between the ages of 12 and 18 who got fully vaccinated against COVID-19. This offer was announced October 1st, 2021, and implementation began only 3 days afterwards at schools across the county and throughout October 2021. Talbot County youth between the ages of birth and age 20 have seen 0 deaths due to COVID-19, a stat that our very own Talbot County Health Officer previously sat right here and shared with you. The most recent COVID-19 vaccine VAERS data for youth in similar age range to those who were eligible to receive gift cards now reports 125 deaths and over 50,000 COVID-19 vaccine injuries reported, many of which injuries are life-threatening and permanently disabling our children, and are even disclosed in the potential vaccine fact sheets provided. We've seen, continue to see, and continue to battle life-threatening COVID-19 vaccine injuries in this same age group right here in Talbot County. I, as well as many Talbot County residents, wonder why this information is not being disclosed by our health department. At this point, there's enough data, even from sources like Harvard Medical and Johns Hopkins, that are exposing the realities of the risks severely outweighing the perceived benefit. $50 may not be a lot to any of you, but to most children and some families it is. October 1st, 2022 is only a few weeks away. If this happens again, please think about our time today and immediately do the right thing. Let families and their respective medical professionals make their own decisions when it comes to their health without any government pressure, influence, or bribery. I would ask each of you to come together and upon such an announcement, work with Talbot County Public Schools and our Board of Education to immediately stop this type of bribery and willful wrongdoing. Our country's children are not science experiments. Thank you for your time, and most importantly, swift action when called upon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else?
So what's really in there? Is there any wine in there? It's been a long night.
That is all that is signed up.
That's all that's signed up?
That is it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to come? Len? Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to get things wrapped up here with council comments. Mr. Villia.
I'd just like to say briefly that I attended 2 different nonprofit charity fundraisers over the weekend, and it was a lot of fun and exciting to get out and start attending those events again. COVID stopped a lot of that, gave a lot of fear to individuals who didn't feel comfortable going out, and both were very positive environments where politics were not discussed. One was for dogs, or for animals. Everybody was talking about their favorite dog or cat or how they rescued or participated positively to make a difference. The other one was for children. And again, everybody was talking about their children, how they made it through daycare and the impact that made, the teachers and them. And again, it was a reminder that during COVID, a lot of people shut down, just focused on what the media was blasting, which was very polarizing. And I hope that we can continue back to opening back up to a more normal society where, politics are not the first thing that's immediately discussed. It doesn't create an immediate divide in the conversation, and that we all do realize that we are a wonderful community to live in, regardless of who you voted for and where your stance is on certain issues. We all amazingly do get along well. And I just wanted to reiterate that I do see us as one community.
Okay. Thank you. Well said. Ms. Price.
Well, considering the hour, I will think that we've had enough discussion.
Okay.
It was good discussion
Okay.
tonight. I really,
Yeah.
and those public hearings were long.
It was.
But we got a
Yeah.
lot of good information, and
Yep.
we don't always do a back and forth, and I think
Right.
sometimes that's appropriate.
Yep.
But with that, good night, everybody.
Yep. Mr. Pack over there.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Just wanted to note a few things that are on our calendar coming up as they will take place before this council comes back together. On September the 24th, we had young Amber Redman in here earlier today as a student board member of the Frederick Douglass Honor Society association that I also sit on. On the 24th of September will be the Frederick Douglass Day event that takes place here in Talbot County. There will be a parade that's starting at Easton Elementary School, coming through town and ending here at the Courthouse Green. There will be events throughout the day, both on the courthouse lawn and right next door at the Talbot County Library, running throughout the day. So just wanted to put that on your calendar in case you didn't have anything planned for the upcoming week to take place, to come out and be a part of that. The 15th of this month, we're going to have our annual county cookout. I just want to give a big shout out to Karen Roberts and Ms. Moran and the whole staff for putting that together. That's always a great event to go to see staff and county employees to get together and eat some hot dogs and hamburgers and play some cornhole. So that's going to be fun too. And unfortunately, we didn't get an opportunity to come together in the day of remembrance for 9/11. We've received some emails. I've received a few phone calls from citizens asking what happened. None of us will ever forget the sacrifice, and as Mr. DeVillio so eloquently mentioned in his prayer today, the sacrifice that were made of those firemen and emergency responders. We just had our EMS staff in here just moments ago. We certainly support them. We certainly are with them. Wish we could have had a day of remembrance today, as we have done for several years before. And whoever's sitting in this seat next year, hopefully they'll continue that tradition. And it doesn't have to be anything long-winded. You know, you can get out there for an hour and a half and just make sure that we are remembering the sacrifices made. So again, just want to say to the public, we did not forget. Timing as it was just did not allow the planning to take place as it normally does. And we have a dedicated staff, but they, you know, they had a number of other things to do as well. So I just want to make that point as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. And I just want to, I just want to highlight what Mr. DeVillio was saying about being at events this weekend. And I was at the fire department golf tournament, which had 140 people to it, golfers. And it just shows you the community output on what this community is all about. We have a great place around here. The golf course looks spectacular. Rich done a good job, his staff. The fire department ran a good event. We had a great time in the new venue that we did out there. It really looked great. So I'm really proud. I was really proud to be there, proud to be a part of it for a good cause. So, and you know, leaning on what Ms. Price said tonight about the public hearing, tonight was a little bit different and unusual, but that's what the public hearing is all about, trying to find a balance, you know, with some of these tough subjects that the council has to deal with. So I appreciate you guys being here tonight and sticking here with us, and all the input and the education that we all, you know, get on public hearings, because we all learn stuff. So being that said, Mr. DeVillio, could you come lead us to the end here?
Sure. So the County Council's next meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 27th, beginning at 6 p.m., hopefully ending on the same day before midnight. The council will be convening an open session at 4:30 p.m., then adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, and personnel matters as listed on the statement closing that meeting. Therefore, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as noted?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion second. Madam Secretary, call the vote.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Why don't we do that one by